Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to MappdCon 2025. We're hanging out today watching. I'm gonna stream live while our friends are recording their sessions, doing their sessions. We can see what's going on. Uh, check out their presentations. You guys can ask me questions. If you ever watch uh, like Monday Night Football with Eli Manning and Peyton Manning, where they're, like, commentating on the show. That's what we're gonna do today. So we're gonna ask some questions, we're gonna answer some questions, we're gonna follow along with Petros. Um, right now, we are in a session with Petros all about, um, why the MCAT matters. If we come here you can see we have 3 sessions going on right now. We have let me see if I can make this a little bigger or smaller. Let's see. Comprehensive guide to CASPA going on, public health programs to broaden your experiences. Let's go join this one. Register. I am registered. Let me log in. Let's see. Let me jump over here. Um, how are you all doing this Friday morning? Hope you're doing well. Let me just get this logged in. All right. All right. That's how we have to do it. All right. So if we come over, did my interview Wednesday, a student panel with the dean yesterday. Congrats, Ron. Congrats, congrats. All right. I jumped around to another session. This is a session with the public health program at Johns Hopkins, Bloomberg School of Public Health. They're doing a session. Let's check in and see what they're talking about. We need people, frankly, who let me know if you can hear that. Understand both the bedside care, but hold on. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Can you hear me? All right. So you can hear that.
online magazines, for example, that are industry recognized in whatever your research is in, and you can submit your work to to have it out there,
What
so
about that?
people will see it. So just as an example, ACOM has the Journal of Occupational Environmental Medicine, but they also have ACOM Quarterly. And so, you know, maybe if you don't feel like it would meet the requirements for the journal, you might be able to submit something to the quarterly, quote unquote, like magazine, and that still has a readership, and then it would still count as,
All
being
right.
something where you're published,
You
even though
can
you're not
hear.
necessarily published in a peer-reviewed journal.
And what if?
um, all right, do we have any other
What
questions?
if I switch over to this? Can you still hear? Let's see how that works. I know they just stopped talking right now. Again, this is
Great. Well,
MappdCon
you guys are welcome
2025.
to connect with us,
Go check it out,
and
MappdCon.com.
we hope that
I
this
can pull their voices down there, getting ready to
connected
jump off and switch to another session.
thorough.
I'm going to come back over here, see what's going on. So that's the public health session. We have exploring osteopathic medicine right now is happening. That one's going to begin shortly. Let's go back. Why the MCAT matters. Let's join this one.
Hey, it's RT from Capier.
Hey, it's RT from Capier.
Medicine, but to start practicing it. If you're here at MapCon, you're serious.
A little
about
promo
getting
video
into
at the beginning there.
PA school, and you know you need clinical experience to be successful, but no one really tells you how to get it. Every job seems to require experience you don't have, and becoming a certified medical assistant.
You guys can still hear the sound.
Jobs, but getting certified feels like it won't work for your schedule. At Capier, we believe getting clinical experience shouldn't be so hard. Everything we do, from our free job board to our medical assistant training, is designed to get you clinical experience that stands out to admissions committees. While you're here at MapCon, don't just plan for school. Take the next step to start practicing medicine. Check out our workshop on getting clinical experience and visit capier.co.
And tells you that Smith, they have averages.
All right, so here's Petros.
Have higher average MCAT scores. There are plenty of people who get in with scores that are below that. There's no guarantee that you're going to get in if you have that score, right? So I hear that all the time. And then, quite frankly, what does it mean to be a top 20, right? Like, are you talking about top 20 in terms of difficulty, top 20 in terms of, the curriculum? Usually it's some ranking that's been released by a publishing company who wants to sell magazine subscriptions.
Petros is answering a top 20 question, which, if you guys know me, you know that I hate U.S. News and World Report's. Their ranking methodology doesn't mean anything in terms of medical school.
You're not going to do 8 hours a day, right? That's a 40-hour week. That's a full-time job. So let's be real. You don't need to do 8 hours per day is what it comes down to. Probably about 15 to 20 hours per week max, usually 10 to 15 hours per week.
You guys ask me as many questions as you want. I'll be jumping around to different sessions. I'm hosting 2 panels as well today during MappdCon, and then closing out with a keynote with Dr. Ricky Brown.
I could open up a book. I mean, people are asking, like, what are good resources? There are plenty of free content resources. You don't need to go buy, spend, hundreds of dollars on a review book. I would use that time, quite frankly, getting a tutor, right? Use that time actually doing practice problems, right? That's more important to you in the long run. There's so much free content out there between Khan Academy and Wikipedia. Quite frankly, ChatGPT is not getting too bad in terms of asking it, to just review a topic, because that just pulls a Wikipedia article is what it does, right? So that's the key.
How's everyone doing this morning? For those of you joining now, we have MappdCon happening today. MappdCon is our big virtual conference. We actually did it in person a couple years ago, and that was a lot. So we're back to virtual. We have a whole day of sessions planned. This is happening live. Petros, our VP of Test Prep and Tutoring, is giving a talk right now about, if we scroll up to the top, why the MCAT matters. And so I'm kind of live streaming, commentating, answering questions all at the same time. So what questions do you have this wonderful Saturday morning?
Taking it and then spending time time reviewing it and then using the outcomes of that review to make changes. Right? That's where your score improvement's going to go. The last thing I'll say in terms of score improvements is you have to be thinking about this as an opportunity to improve. And I know that sounds weird. I just said score improvement's an opportunity to improve. We like to do things as human beings that we're good at.
That's true.
Anybody can argue with me on that.
That's so true.
Truth, right? Like that is how it works.
We
like
avoid things that make us feel bad.
And so we want to do those things. When you're studying for the
100%.
MCAT, if you keep working on the things that you're good at, your score is not going to improve. And I had that conversation with too many students, right? They're like, why didn't my score improve? I'm taking all this practice. I'm like, did you work on the stuff that you're not good at? No, it was too hard. Well, then your score's not going to improve, right? That's the key there. So, Yanni, the ideal score you should have aimed for, that's the easiest answer in the world. 528, right? We're all aiming for perfection is what it comes down to. But you don't need a 528. But that's what you're aiming for is the key. I'm going to take us through a problem here. I see there are lots of questions that are still coming through. I'll try to answer as many of them as I can, but I do want to make sure that we do take a look at a problem because I think this will also help you all understand kind of how to think about the MCAT. And we can get those other questions answered at another time is what it comes down to. And we will. So we're not ignoring you. But keep asking them is what it is. When you're looking at MCAT problems, we've ideally or theoretically spoken about kind of how this all comes together. I want to show you what I mean by this and what we mean by this.
Oh, it's going to break down a question.
This is kind of a perfect example.
What questions do you guys have for me?
That we've been talking about here today, that they don't reward you for actually knowing any information. They only reward you for being able to apply the information, right? So this is what we mean by this. So typical MCAT question. So this is a standalone question. This is not a passage-based question per se. This is just on its own. But there's always a little bit of background info, right? They give you some info in there and all that. So here they say that the sodium-potassium ATPase, this is sodium-potassium pump, normally exports 3 sodium ions from the cytosol and imports 2 potassium ions per ATP that's hydrolyzed. That is not new information, right? This is, that is the key, is that is not new information. You've learned this in an undergraduate bio class, right? That's the bottom line is what it comes down to. Then they introduce the caveat, right? The what's it called? The twist in the story. They say newly discovered marine toxin alters the pump so that each catalytic cycle exports only 2 sodium ions while importing 3 potassium ions. So it messes things up. They still haven't asked you a question, right? This is the key here, is that no question has in fact yet been asked.
Trevor, I know you don't like the generic med school rankings. What do you think the best way to find out information on them is? Good question, Trevor. It depends on what you mean by the best way to find out information. If what you're asking is find out information about how this school will help me in my career, which is what the rankings, how people use the rankings inappropriately, there's no answer to that because the medical school doesn't help you in your career. You help yourself in your career. You go to medical school, you work your butt off, you do well on your exams, you do well on your rotations, you do well on your boards, you form great relationships, get good letters of recommendations. It's all you. So everything else in terms of gathering information on medical schools is all about the internet. Right? Go to the school's website. Go check out local news and what is the school doing in that community. Go look at Student Doctor Network. This is the one place where I do recommend Student Doctor Network, is going and looking at their ranking, or not their rankings, their individual kind of threads on Student Doctor Network. And what are students saying about their experience at that school?
I won't read the last two.
With a grain of salt, because
It's a lot of words.
most people complain, right? The loudest people, the people that are talking most online, are complaining about something. So you have to take that with a grain of salt.
Come to an MCAT session to learn about pattern recognition.
Yeah,
Yes, you did.
that's it.
Help you as far as the MCAT is.
Let me
The middle
move myself up here
for all
so
four
you guys can see me, even with questions up.
right?
And then I don't have to switch off.
Membrane potential width.
I don't know what you think about that, Trevor.
Usually the same words. So all we really should be caring about, and this is how you have to start thinking about this exam as far as your kind of the way you see things. All we really care about is the first word and the last words, right?
So what we're watching right now is Petros going over a MCAT style question. Petros is our VP of Test Prep and Tutoring at Medical School HQ. This is MappdCon. Go over to MappdCon.com. You can register for free and go jump around to the other sessions that are happening right now. If I go back and see Exploring Osteopathic Medical School.
Now, we often get questions about how competitive DO students are when it comes to specialties.
All right, let's listen to this.
Take another moment and share with you some data from last year's graduating class about our match rates. So this chart shows you the percentage of U.S. DO seniors who match to their preferred specialty in 2024. And you can see, again, that we're represented in all specialties across the spectrum, from everything from anesthesiology to dermatology, general surgery, neurology, all the way to psychiatry and vascular surgery. So the world is truly your oyster when it comes to osteopathy.
So this is the team behind AACOMAS and AACOM.
Just a little bit more about
talking
our
about
rates.
the
This year,
DO
we
world.
did have a record high of 99.404% of our graduates were placed in a residency.
That's awesome.
Now, for those of you who are thinking you might be interested in earning an additional degree beyond your DO degree, we do have a number of comms in our network that have dual degree opportunities, and those opportunities include DO MPH.
How many of
DO
you are
PhD,
potentially
DO
applying to
MS.
interested
So
in
all of those
DO
things are
school?
available to you as well at
How many of you are
We'll
applying to
share with
DO
you
school
a
as
little
well
bit
as
later on a resource
MD
that you can use to
school?
find which
My
school
general
is
advice is students should apply to both. Apply to both medical or medical school and DO school. DO school is medical school. I often hear that argument where it's like, are you going to medical school or are you going to DO school? It's a medical school. How many of you are thinking about applying DO and MD? Trevor says, I am. Nice.
Who recognize our philosophy and find that it resonates with them. And we're also looking for applicants who excel academically. So what does that mean? Most of our schools are going to have the same general basic admissions requirements of a year of biology, a year of physics, a year of English. We're going to be looking for 2 years of chemistry, right? So these generally, if you hear the term pre-med requirements, these are the courses that we're generally referring to. Specific schools may have additional prerequisite requirements beyond this. So as you're building your list of schools that you want to apply to, you want to make sure that you're looking up each individual school's prerequisite requirements to make sure that you meet those. But generally speaking, these are the courses that you want to have under your belt before applying to a medical program. So we are looking for those courses. We're also looking to see that you've done well in those courses. So we are going to be evaluating you.
What questions you guys have about DO schools, if any? Again, this is AACOM and AACOMAS talking about osteopathic medical schools for MappdCon 2025.
Then we're also going to look at your science GPA. And that science GPA is really a closer look at those math and science classes to see how well you've performed in those courses specifically. In addition to your coursework, we do also require the MCAT, and we're looking for competitive MCAT scores as well. And you're probably wondering, well, what is a competitive MCAT score? So I will share with you the matriculant profile from our 2024 class. And I will also say that MCAT scores are one of the many factors that schools are evaluating. So we're looking at more than just your MCAT, but it is very important to present competitive MCAT scores. So the averages that you see here are a collective average of all DO students across all of our colleges.
What do you guys think about that data?
Average mean, it means that there are
Does that
some
surprise
who
you?
admitted who had scores that were both a little
503
higher than
MCAT,
what we see here and maybe a little
3.6
lower than what we
GPA.
see here. But this generally
What do you
gives
think
you a
about that?
sense of whether or not you're in the ballpark, that ballpark profile of students that are getting admitted to osteopathic medical schools. And then, of course, individual schools are going to have their own averages. So there may be some schools with a little bit of a higher average and some schools with a little bit of a lower average. So you want to make sure that you're looking up that information as well, to make sure that you're applying to schools where your profile kind of matches their general matriculant profile. Now, I mentioned that grades and test scores are just two metrics that we're looking at. We are also evaluating you for your personal qualities because we really want well-rounded individuals on our campuses. So to be a really competitive applicant, in addition to those grades and test scores, you're going to have most, if not all, of the traits that you see listed here. So competitive applicants are going to have really strong communication and interpersonal skills. We want to see that you've been involved in some community service, some leadership. We definitely want to make sure that you've got some clinical experience under your belt. And we want to know that you understand what osteopathic medicine is, what makes it distinct, and that this is the right career path for you, that you've done some reflecting and that you've done some
Do you guys have any
research and
questions
know what
about
it is, and that
DO
you're sure that this is the
applications,
to becoming a physician.
MD applications, anything? We can open it up to general Q&A as well.
Our cycle typically opens on the first Monday in May, and it's going to close on the second Friday of the following June. So that's a 13-month cycle. So for the 25-26 cycle, for anyone who wants to start medical school in the fall of 2026,
that's one of the crazy things about the DO cycle is it's much longer than the MD cycle.
And then it's going to close in June of 2026. Now that's a big window. College deadlines are going to vary within that window, right? So just because the cycle is open until June 12th, that does not mean that all of our schools are accepting applications until
I'm
June
glad
12th.
she mentioned that.
Some of our schools
Rolling deadlines, my friends, rolling deadlines. You have to pay attention to rolling
so again,
deadlines.
when you're
Don't pay
making your
attention
short
to
list, you want to make sure that you're
not
paying
rolling
attention
deadlines,
to when those
rolling
deadlines
admissions.
pop up, and that you're getting
Don't
your
pay attention to
application in
deadlines.
ahead of those deadlines. Now, for those of you who are very intense planners, I will share some stats with you that historically we get about 50% of all the applications that we're going to receive in a year by July. So by the end of July, about half
Interesting
of all
data
the
point.
applications have come in already. And then by the end of October, we've got about 90% of all applications. So most students are applying in that summer, early fall range. And then about 10% of applications come in over the winter holidays. So just keep that in mind. Most of our schools will start interviewing on the earlier side. Some of them start as early as August. So when folks ask, like, when is the best time for me to apply? The real answer is don't apply until you're ready, right?
When should you apply to DO school? Yeah, so I think she just said, right, don't apply until you're competitive. At the end of the day, the timeline, I think, is the same for MD schools, is you get your application in by June, ideally. You just heard her mention that AACOMAS gets 50% of their applications by July. And so that's really interesting. The timeline is just much more stretched out in the DO cycle. And there are reasons behind that. I have conversations with the people at AACOM all the time about their process and their timeline and their communication and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I would recommend submitting your AACOMAS application first, get that in, make sure it's ready to go. Work on your AACOMAS application, work on secondaries, and just get going.
If you are looking at state schools in the state of Texas, Texas has their own state mandated system, so you'll have to apply through that. But if you're looking at schools in any of the other 49 states, then you're going to use our AACOMAS application to apply to those schools. Now, the application.
I mean, there's a caveat to what she just said. She said if you're applying to Texas, then you apply to TMDSAS. But Incarnate Word is AACOMAS, and that's in Texas. So there's a little caveat to that.
Access your application. For those of you that are currently in school, please make sure that you are using an email address that you will be able to access beyond your graduation date.
MappdMail.
Sometimes
Use
schools will
MappdMail.
allow you to continue to access your student email for several months after you've graduated, and sometimes they might terminate your access pretty soon after you graduate. And if that's the email address that you've used to create your account, then you might have some trouble accessing your account, and you won't be receiving those communications from the schools to which you've applied. So make sure that you've got a professional personal email address that you're using to create your account, something that you'll be able to access indefinitely. Now, the application itself has 4 sections, and this is the home screen. Once you log in, this is your dashboard, and this is going to track completion of each section. So you can see here, pretty self-explanatory. Anytime you see that progress bar that's going partially the way around the circle, that means that there's some questions in there that you've missed. If you've completed an entire section, the center image will be filled in green, and you'll see that little check mark there. So again, there are 4 sections. We're going to ask you about personal information. We're going to ask about your academic history. We're going to ask you for some supporting information. And then there will be a section for program materials. And those are the questions specific to each school that you are applying to. So the personal information section, everything that you would typically expect in terms of demographic information, your name, your contact information, race and ethnicity, that sort of thing. There is, I will note, a release statement, which is the very first set of questions that you'll be asked. Now, I raise this because even if you are not ready to apply this cycle, what happens with that release statement is if you authorize release, your name and contact information, so your name and your email address and no other application information, just those 2 pieces, will be released to COMS, to the Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine, and they'll be able to contact you about any upcoming recruitment events that they might have.
It's an interesting question. What kinds of financial aid does AACOM have other than the application fee waiver? They don't have anything. Very different. MCAT doesn't have anything other than the fee waiver as well. So I'm not sure what else they're potentially looking for there.
Relevant to what your interests are. Now, the next section is going to ask about your academic history. So this is going to ask for all of the courses that you've taken. The transcript entry section, that's going to be kind of an involved process. So you are going to have to enter course by course, the name of the course, the term you took it, the grade you earned, and how many credits that course was. Now, depending on how many classes you've taken and how many institutions,
entering all those courses, it's going to take a while.
Process. So we do have a professional transcript entry service.
Do not use their transcript entry service.
That's something that you're interested in if you'd like someone else to do that for you.
Do not use someone else to do that.
There is a fee for that service. So if that's something that you're thinking about using, you want to make sure that you're building in that fee to your application budget. Right now, it's $80 for up to 3 transcripts. If you have more than 3 transcripts, then there is an additional fee for those additional transcripts. And I will also mention that the process does take about 10 days. So keep those deadlines in mind. If you're applying to a school with a deadline on the 1st, you want to make sure that you start that professional transcript entry service at the very latest by the 20th, because it's going to take about 10 days for them to enter all of your courses for you.
What questions do you guys have?
Now,
I'm here answering questions.
Require official copies of transcripts and MCAT scores.
So for those of you joining, this is MappdCon 2025 happening right now. I'm kind of live streaming with it. You guys can listen. This is a presentation going on right now from the Association of American Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine, the people behind AACOMAS and the kind of overarching body behind osteopathic schools.
So we have received official copies of both of those documents. Now, the third quadrant, this is my personal favorite. This is the supporting information quadrant, and this is where you get to highlight who you are beyond your grades and your test scores. This is your opportunity really to show off all those personal traits that we talked about earlier. And that starts with evaluations, or that's what we call letters of recommendation. So every applicant can submit up to 6 evaluation letters through the process. You also have an opportunity to list all of the experiences that you've been involved in. So I like to tell students, whether it's paid or unpaid, whether it's healthcare related or not, We want to know how you're spending your time. We want to know what's important to you, and we want to know what you could potentially bring to our campus. So definitely take some time, be very thoughtful about sharing your experiences with us, and don't self-edit, right? Don't only tell us about the DO that you shadowed and not tell us about all the other campus-based leadership that you've been involved in because it's not medical related. We still want to know what you're involved in, even if it's not strictly healthcare.
Yeah, good advice. It's a common mistake that we see students make where they only put their medical experiences on an application. And you're like, what were you doing your whole time? And you're like, oh, I was doing other things. I just didn't think it was supposed to go on the application.
Of course, we will ask for a brief personal statement. Now, this is the space where you really get to highlight your passion for osteopathic medicine and the philosophy of the field, and really convince the committee and show them that you've done your homework and that you know that you want to become a DO. Now, the fourth quadrant is the program material section, and this is where you're going to find college-specific questions for each school that you're applying to. So once you've selected your school of interest, you'll click the little plus button that I've highlighted here. That will populate a program page, and the program page is where you're going to find all the campus-specific information. So information about any specific prerequisites that they might have in addition to those basic ones that we talked about earlier, information about any dual degree programs that they might offer. You'll often find in the questions tab that there's a question that asks if you'd like to be considered, and so that's where you would indicate that. Any information about the campus, the deadlines, anything else that you might need to know as an applicant to that school will be in that program page, so do make sure you review that program page thoroughly. I did mention an application budget not too long ago, so unfortunately applying to medical school is not free. We do charge a
Doesn't have
primary
to be free,
application fee
but it
of
doesn't have to be that expensive.
$198, and that covers your initial application. So your application going to
Costs gone wild. That fee just keeps going up and up and up.
And it's going to be $60 for every additional school or designation. You may hear us use those terms interchangeably. We do offer a fee waiver program that covers the initial application fee. So if you're eligible for that, you want to make sure that you submit that application, and that might provide a little bit of assistance through the process. The fee waiver application is actually embedded within the AACOMAS application. So this little screen grab that you see here is the upper right-hand corner of your dashboard. So if
What do you guys
click
think
over
of
any,
the cost of applying to medical school?
And the third option you'll see there that I've highlighted is the fee waiver form. So you just submit that. We process those pretty quickly, and then you'll get a decision. What I will note is that the application fee waiver is only valid for 14 days. So you want to make sure that when
so
you
that's
apply for that fee waiver,
I'm glad they mentioned that. It's a huge difference between the AAMCAS fee waiver, the AAMC fee waiver, and the AACOM fee waiver, AACOMAS fee waiver. The AACOMAS fee waiver is first come, first serve. They have limited funds every year, but you can't apply for the fee assistance until you're ready to submit your application. As she just mentioned, you only have 14 days once you get that waiver approved to submit your application. If it's below 14 days, then you lose the fee waiver. With AAMCAS, you want to apply for the fee waiver way before the application because you're going to use the fee waiver for your MCAT material as well and MCAT registration. So it's a very different process. You got to keep that in mind. Mo, I actually sent a thank you interview note with the wrong date. I quickly replied, correcting the mistake. Is it over for me? I wouldn't worry about it. I really wouldn't worry about it. I'm assuming you just mean, hey, thanks for interviewing me on 9/13 when you meant 9/11 or whatever it was. I wouldn't worry about that. No worries. Congrats on the interview, Mo. That's awesome. Trevor, when I asked about the cost of medical school, Trevor says crazy. Yeah, I agree. I have hopes of changing that, fixing that. But we'll see.
education services and outreach at AACOM.
Thanks, Brianna.
Thank y'all so much for being here. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference and visit as many osteopathic sessions as you're able to.
That's awesome. For those just joining, I'm kind of live streaming side by side. I'm not actually talking to Brianna in that moment. I have the MappdCon videos going, so these are happening live. You can go register for free right now at MappdCon.com, and go check out all of the other sessions. Let's go look at the agenda now that session's over. You guys can see what's coming up. Let me unzoom here. So this is not, it's not well laid out. Let me zoom in this bottom part. So we have, what time is it now? This is happening live. So Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine about to give a talk. I'm going to have Natalie Davis, their director of admissions, on a panel later on. We have Savannah from the PA platform and Jordan from the PA platform talking about essays for your PA school application. Well, let's go check in this one. How to apply for medical school, an overview of the 3 application services. Let's just go ahead and look all day long. We have our great friend RT from Capier, getting clinical experience, what matters most to clinical employers. RT runs Capier. Capier is a online medical assistant, virtual medical assistant certification program, which is awesome. Go check that out. Accelerate your healthcare journey. Another session going on from ACT. How to become a PA, again with Savannah. Pathway to building a strong application, again, our medical school HQ team, Courtney and Dr. Christine Crispin. MDDO. All these great sessions happening. Our MD admissions panel later. So this is 1:30 Eastern, 11:30 my time. So I had a couple hours before that. I got up early for you guys today. Medical school interview conversation with Carlos and Dina. So much awesome stuff going on. Oh, amazing. Amazing, amazing. All right, let's go check out our friends. What's happening right now? This doesn't like me zoomed in. All right, let's go check out this one. Love this video. I think this is AACOM, Arkansas College of Osteopathic Medicine. It's got a nice beat. Boom. I love that. All right, this session is getting started.
Students that are interested in applying are in the pre-med track. All of this information will be good for you. So welcome. Happy Saturday. It is a nice day here in Dallas, Texas in September. I don't know, Kristen, how about where you are at?
It's really nice. It's cooled down a bit. It's not too hot. So I'm in Utah. Things have been a little bit wild this week here, but we're doing okay.
That's awesome. Good to hear that you are moving along. Although there's tragedy, happens all the time, that we are here today to present. So for those who don't know me, my name is Carlos Tapia. I'm one of the advisors here. I was a former director of admissions at the Ambernet School of Medicine at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. I was
former director of admissions.
Affairs
Love it.
at the Icon School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Also a co-host for the podcast for the Med School Years podcast, where we talk to current medical students all about their journey in medicine and residency. So, Kristen, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Kristen Anderson, and I am one of the expert pre-med advisors here at medical school headquarters as well. And I previously was the assistant dean and director of admissions at the Nordic College of Osteopathic Medicine. And before that, I served as a pre-medical advisor for 8 years at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah.
Awesome. I've never been to Utah, so I'm curious.
It's beautiful. You should come visit.
All
It's
right.
awesome. The mountains are unlike anything else.
Awesome. As a reminder, engage in the chat, introduce yourselves, keep busy, ask questions. We will answer your questions as we go through the presentation. There is a possibility of a prize for a lucky winner out there, so engage, remain active throughout the presentation as we move forward through the slides. And we're all today here to talk about how to apply to medical school using the 3 application services. So, Kristen, get us started.
Yes. So one thing to know when you're applying to medical school, you could be using 1, 2, or 3 application services.
1, 2, or 3.
And we talk about application.
How many of you all are planning on applying to
services? 1 for the MD schools,
2?
schools.
How many of you are planning on applying to 3?
And then 1 for Texas medical schools. And within these central application services, you essentially fill out 1 application, and then you can designate which schools your application is released to. What else do I want to say with that? Yeah, MCAS is for MD schools, AACOMAS for DO schools, and TMDSAS for Texas schools. So this is one thing to just be aware of, that it's not 1 application. You could be filling out 3 applications, and there, as we're about to get into, there are a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences to be aware of, which may or may not add to your work as you prepare to apply and when you're.
Trevor says just MD and DO. So no TMDSAS.
And I think that's key here of, although there's 3, right, not to panic because of the similarities. I think the differences, I personally think, are maybe minor, just depending on where you're applying, and they're unique, that a lot of the duplication has already been done. So if you're applying to one and you're looking at DO schools, or you're in Texas and you're looking at Texas schools and DO schools and across the country, you're going to do the same work, right? Except for some of the basic differences. And we'll go over that today as well. So you can see that although, again, it looks like it's a lot, you're going to do the work anyway. So it's not like you're creating different sort of workflows or streams of work here.
That's the nice thing, is they're pretty standardized across the board.
Yeah, I think there's a general theme of work smarter, not harder, as you go through this process. So to Carlos's point, don't rewrite all of your essays for each application service. You will see as we go on and discuss further that a lot of the essays are the same or similar, and sometimes it's just a matter of adjusting your character count, either building it out a little bit or cutting it down a little bit to fit the individual application services character limits.
With that said, let's go ahead and talk about even the similarities, right, in the deadlines and key dates.
As you guys are watching, if you have any questions about AMCAS or AACOMAS or TMDSAS, go ahead and let me know. I can answer. We're kind of watching Carlos and Kristen give their presentation for MappdCon, but I can answer questions as well.
For you to start inputting your information, is, if you could think about it as, I would say, a history of everything that you have done in preparation for medicine. That includes academics and all that stuff. So that's why they give you enough lead time for you to go in there and enter information. Traditionally, you can officially submit for verification at the end of May, and then AMCAS holds all the data and releases it at the end of June, traditionally. That is when programs can go in and access your application information within their own respective systems. AACOMAS opens in early May. You can submit immediately, and then once your application goes through the process, it's transmitted to schools once it's verified. So theirs is fairly quicker. I would say that the earliest I heard this year was like a couple weeks after submission. So they're fairly quick, and DO schools are turning those quickly. And I think our DO students, or the students that I was working with, um, are the ones that were telling me like by the end of June, by the end of May, that they were getting secondaries, and I was like, wow, right, compared to MCAS. So just be mindful of that; those will come earlier. TMDSAS follows a little bit of the AMCAS process. It opens in May for you to fill out, but they only give you 2 weeks to really complete an application. And then you can submit on May 15th. They do take a little bit of time for it to get verified, and then schools can go in there and pull the information. Again, similar to the fact that there's 3 application services, the deadlines are all similar. So you're kind of, if you're applying to all 3 application services, you're doing the same thing over and over again. And there's a lot of repetition.
Yep.
So you just have to be mindful, right? You would have to plan this out to make sure that you stay on top of everything. Kristen, anything else?
Yeah, I just want to note one thing that you see on there. There are transmission references to transmission and verification, and that simply means that once you are done filling out your application, you click submit. It doesn't become immediately available to the schools. The central application services themselves will actually take what you've entered, because you're going to have to enter each course that you have taken ever in college, and you will enter those, all the information about those courses, and then you will actually have official transcripts sent from each of your colleges or universities, and that will go to potentially each of these application services, whichever ones you're applying to, and then they do a verification process. TMDSAS is a little bit different, but AMCAS and AACOMAS, once you click submit, they take your coursework, they take your transcripts, they're verifying, they're calculating GPAs, and that takes time.
Answering questions during the session as well. You guys ask me as many questions as you want to.
As they get into the cycle, I've heard as quick as like a 2 or 3 day turnaround. Initially, it is a little bit slower because they get that huge rush, but yeah, it can turn around pretty quickly. AMCAS, on the other hand, we're often talking 4 to 6 weeks, depending on where we're at in the cycle. So that's one thing that you want to be mindful of. It's not as simple as finish my application, submit it, and I'm good. Like they're going to get my application right away. There is that back end process that you really do need to be mindful of. And I'll tell you, the later we get in the cycle, the longer that starts to take. And then the panic really sets in. So all to say, prepare early, apply early, and you will reduce a lot of stress on your part.
Yeah, we got a question about the Texas application service. Do they differentiate between MD and DO applications? I think you're speaking specifically within the state of Texas. I think you're applying only to schools in Texas, so they only transmit to schools that participate as far as TMDSAS. So if you're speaking specifically about TCOM and I think Sam Houston, they're all within that application. So I don't think there's much a differentiation if you're applying to programs within the state of Texas. The good thing is, pitch to our colleagues that have worked with TMDSAS, they're hosting a specific session for TMDSAS. So if you are a Texas applicant and you have specific questions about the application system, they can answer them, and it's later today. And I don't know how the exactly a time, but if you go into the Mapcon portal and look at the agenda, you should be able to see that. Okay. All right, moving on. One of the key important things here is cost. We always talk about sort of applying to medical school takes money and time, right? Time is money. Money is money. As you can see here,
Sorry,
we had
Trevor.
a question about the pricing of application submissions. Each of the application services is different. Some have higher fees, some have lower fees, some are flat fees, some have a fee for the first school, additional fees for each school that you apply to. So you can imagine this starts to become very, very expensive as you move through the process. I would say I don't think anybody is prepared for what happens in this process. Even I am a little shocked of how much it costs to process an application. But it's not just primary applications; it's also secondary applications. It's something that folks think or maybe don't anticipate, right? That the average price for a secondary application per school varies from $300 to $250, right? The average is about $100. And I think I've seen it increase in my time in medical education.
Oh, Trevor, what is the seat deposit? So the seat deposit is when you are offered the acceptance you then have to pay a deposit
Some
to
schools
hold
charge
your
deposits,
seat.
some schools
He's
don't.
talking about
As
it
you
now.
can see, for typically MD schools, keep it at a low end of the spectrum, $100 to
It's
hold your
regulated by
seat.
the
Looks
AAMC.
like DOs tend to go from $50 to $3,000, just depending on the program. Again, at the end of the day, it's about keeping you on the roster.
The DO school deposits are out of control, and it's something I'm good friends with the director of undergraduate medical education now at AACOM, and it was the first thing I talked to him. He's new in the role, and I harassed him at a conference. I said, "You need to get this under control." The deposits are horrendous. They're typically non-refundable. And students don't have $2,500, $3,000 for a non-refundable deposit. And it's out of desperation that these schools are doing this, and the students are doing it because they don't want to give up their acceptance just in case they don't get another one.
Or tutoring services, prep materials, advising or coaching services that you may choose to pay for.
Yeah.
It doesn't include anything associated with travel, so you might need to buy new clothes, or actually pay for your travel, airfare, hotel, food, transportation. As you can see, it adds up quite a bit, and this is one thing that I think Carlos was saying, that it can be pretty surprising, pretty shocking how quickly all of this adds up, and a lot of times I think applicants go into this not fully understanding how much it really does take to get through this process. So the earlier you can start saving and preparing and being mindful, the better off you'll be. And one thing to note is that AMCAS and AACOMAS do have fee assistance programs and as well. So AMCAS has the AMC fee assistance program, where you will get free applications, reduced fees for MCAT registration. They have free resources, free access to the MSAR, um, and some reduced fees and free things there. And then with AACOMAS, they will, if you are approved for the AACOMAS fee waiver, they waive that fee, that initial processing fee. You are going to have to pay for each additional designation beyond that first school, but they do waive that fee. And then another thing to note is, if you're approved for either of these services, TMD-SAS schools will often account for, or they'll consider that and potentially waive secondary application fees. That is also true for AMCAS and AACOMAS schools. A lot of those will honor any of those fee assistance programs that you have been approved for, and they'll waive their secondary application fees. So if you've been approved for either of those programs, definitely ask. It's worth asking if they will waive the secondary fee. Like I said, some will, some won't, and that doesn't even extend to TMD-SAS as well. They'll often honor that.
Yeah, thank you for your insights, Kristen. Like, I didn't know all that, so thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
All right, let's move on. The writing, it's the big portion of the application, and if you can't see the bottom portion of the screen here, because we're here as talking heads, I'm sure the presentation will be available where you can pull the details as after we're done here. But we've talked a lot about the similarities, right, and the differences here in terms of like the dates and timeline. Now let's talk about the bulk of the things that you have to do, which is the writing piece. So all of these application services require a personal statement, personal essay. That I will say that is the lengthiest of all the.
Trevor, do the DO acceptances normally come in later than MD? No, they come in sooner. And again, this kind of goes to a little bit of desperation from the DO side. So the way that the process works is on the MD side, so TMD-SAS and AMCAS, TMD-SAS doesn't have to, but they follow the rules set by the AAMC, where acceptances can't go out until October 15th, mid-October. DO schools don't follow that guidance, and they now you can get an interview invite within a week of submitting your application in May, potentially, right? You could get an acceptance within a month of submitting in May. And so the process is much more accelerated. I think DO schools are just trying to do their best to fill their seats. There have been some schools the last several years where they're really struggling at the end of the cycle to fill their seats, and so yeah, so they're trying to like come to our school. We'll offer you first, and then you won't go anywhere else. And then yeah, it's not a good look. And again, I say this stuff to them directly to ACOM, so they need to fix that. Yeah, that's exactly why their seat deposits are high as well.
All of these additional essays, optional essays, TMDSAS has like current involvements, personal characteristic essays, which is additional 5,000 characters that you get to submit. Plus, there's an optional essay that's 2,500 characters, and then all of these other ones. I will say that MD PhDs have very specific essays, but I'll let you guys read this slide and hopefully ask questions. And Kristen, if you want to add anything.
Sure. Yeah. So first I want to acknowledge that I know the font on here is small, and I broke, presentation rule number 1 of putting too many words on the page. But I did this for a reason. I think it is important that you understand the sheer volume of essays that need to be written. That I think a lot of times applicants, this is one of those big pitfalls that applicants fall into. They just simply do not account for the amount of time that goes into writing these applications, writing for these applications, writing these essays. And sometimes they'll get into the application thinking, hey, I wrote my personal statement, I wrote my work and activities descriptions, and I'm good. And then they're surprised by some of these other essays that pop up. And some of them you've got to be pretty nuanced in how you respond, particularly around things like institutional actions or conduct violations, or if you have felony or misdemeanor charges. Those are things that you really need to be mindful of how you're writing, and that's not something that you just want to hurry and type into the application. Ideally, you have some time to really work your wording and get some feedback and make sure that those things are coming through as you would want them to. So yeah, all to say, please, please, please prepare. Please don't just open the application and think you're going to, bang out a personal statement. It takes a lot of time, and and schools take them very seriously. They do review everything that is written, and they take that into consideration.
Kristen, from your experience, for a full application, how long have you sort of the length of the work that you've done with students that you've advised to say, like, this is a solid application, right? What is that lead times? Just to give an idea of, again, to your point, it's not like I open an application, I'm going to fill it out and submit it.
Sure.
So folks can understand how much work goes into this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as with anything, it varies, right? I think some people are obviously stronger writers than others. And you need to also consider what else you've got going on while you're writing these. It's not, excuse me, it's not often that you can just make writing your application essays like a full-time job. You're typically juggling courses. You might be prepping for the MCAT, might be doing, those preview and Casper exams, still in your extracurricular activities, working, volunteering, all of that. So it can vary quite a bit. So I would honestly say if you are thinking you want to apply this next cycle, so when applications open in May of 2026, to have the best shot at being ready early and not stressing yourself out, particularly if you're studying for the MCAT and you've got other stuff going on, I would start writing now. This literally takes months. We're talking months of lead time. This isn't a couple of weeks that, okay, I'll just dedicate, full time for a couple of weeks. You really need, for some of these things.
I'm a fan of months for writing the essays for one specific reason. You can write and then you can walk away and then come back with fresh eyes and look at things critically with fresh eyes. You're less married to what you wrote because you've separated yourself from it, and you can think more critically about it. So that's why I like starting much earlier so that you can do that.
I think the same, right? I think for anybody that's interested in applying in any given May, I would say it begins the fall prior to you in beginning that sort of, or is showing that interest for that following application cycle. It takes a lot of, to your point, right, juggling of multiple, I would say, hats, writing, taking time to really reflect on what you're going to include in your pieces, what activities you're working on. I think MCAT is a big sort of time frame that you have to sort of dedicate to studying on top of academics. But everybody's journey is different, right? I think the one thing that I've experienced through this process, and I think more and more now, that there's, I would say, we still separate, right, non-traditional to traditional buckets, but I think we're starting to see this blend where I don't think there is a non-traditional traditional, meaning from the standpoint of gap years and multiple gap years, and the way that people decide to say, well, I'm going to finish my undergrad, decide to take a gap year because then I'm going to study for the MCAT, solely dedicating time for that plus other activities, and then I'm going to engage in something else. So I personally think that those titles of traditional, non-traditional are starting to sort of blur the line, just because of the, I would say, different paths and complexities that are behind each individual journey and story. But going back to the foundational question here, it's like, how long does it take? I would say it takes about 6 to 8 months, depending again on how quickly you jump on things, how quickly you can move forward. If you're the type of person that's going to need a lot of time to reflect on feedback given to you, or even come up with outlines for different things. The one thing that
For those of you joining, I'm here live streaming MappdCon 2025 over at MappdCon.com. If you have questions, ask them. I'm here reading questions, answering questions, whether it's about this specific session or not. Let me know.
my perspective, the personal statement is still the reason why you want to go into medicine. The MD PhD is why you see yourself as a physician scientist. Because I've seen a lot of that where there's overlap, and I'm like, no, let's focus the personal statement on the medicine piece, and then the MD PhD on why physician scientist, right? Um, and then of course you still have an additional essay that talks about your significant research experience, to really highlight the blend of these two disciplines, right? The MD PhD. So, what is Kristen? Any thoughts on the MD PhD stuff?
Um, I think that, yeah, to your point, being prepared to address those things kind of separately, and there is a question of what constitutes significant research. And MD PhD programs, I mean, they're looking for you to have previous research experience, and that is your opportunity to write about those experiences. And so, what would you say constitutes significant research experience, Carlos?
I I would say it's a twofold, right? Does it look? Is it hours you've done something that has made an impact in science, right? I think there's that
Do you
approach, but
think it's
there's also, I think,
best
personal
to start with your personal statement or activities? Good question. I think they're very separate things. So I don't think um, you need to. Um, I don't think you need to start with one or the other. A lot of students use the activity section as a continuation of the personal statement, where a lot of the activities, if not all of the activities, continue to add to the why medicine story. Uh, I don't think that's how you should do it. I don't think anyone on our team thinks that. The activities are, what did you do in that activity? What impact did you have on that activity? What impact did the activity have on you as a person? And the personal statement is why medicine. And so they're very different. And so I think you can do them in parallel. And actually, that's probably my recommendation is work a little bit on the personal statement, write a draft, put it aside, go to the activity section, work on a couple activities, put it aside, go back to something else, work on that. And so that allows you to get that separation so that you can come back with fresh eyes.
in that essay. We were getting some questions also if there's sort of a website that allows you to put all of this and get it done ahead of time. A mock application that you can fill out and then copy what the application opens. I would say our software, Map, does a good job of keeping track of your activities.
Yep.
And you can write descriptions in there. doesn't track personal statement, but I think you can keep track of that. I think the other way that you can do it, I know MCAS, TMDSAS, and I think AACOMAS has a good application guide that sort of walks you through the process of what you're going to expect in each of the, I would say, pages or processes within the application. So you can really start to look and take a deep dive and maybe create a checklist of like, okay, I have this, I have that. But for the most part, that's what's available. Of course, we're always offering advice sessions, office hours with us weekly, online, streaming on multiple platforms. We host different webinars throughout the year when it comes to the application season as well, just sort of keep you on track, keep you on task. I would say so. Definitely keep looking to us as resources. I would ensure that if your undergrad has a very robust pre-health office, that you can also count on them to give you the resources and what is needed. But I think it's not a one size fits all. Unfortunately, you're going to have to utilize multiple resources. So,
Yes.
any other
Yeah.
resources that you know, Kristen?
So I would stress. I want to kind of put a point on your suggestion of using those application guides. So often I get questions that students will bring to me. How do I do this? What should I fill out here? How should I fill out this piece? And it's in the applicant guide. So definitely use those application guides. And then
Yep.
also I'm a big advocate of actually creating an account. You can actually create an account now, even if you're not applying for a couple of years. Create an account with each of the application services that you're planning to apply through. You can go in and kind of start filling out kind of information to get through the process. Don't expect it to stay there. They will wipe that and you'll be very sad if you think that you've filled this out a year in advance or 2 years in advance and all you're going to do is click submit. Um, and because it will go away, but you can get in there and kind of just poke around and get familiar with the applications so that when it actually comes time to fill it out, you know where to find stuff and where things need to go, and you have some a general understanding of everything you are going to be filling out.
Yep.
And before we move on to the next sort of slide, I want to make mention there was a question earlier, like where can I go in and update information and things like that. I would say for the AAMC, I believe TMDSAS, and Kristen, you have experience with AACOMAS. There is really no room for error, meaning like if you forgot something, you can't go back in and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, ADCAS, I messed up. Can I please have my
Nope.
application back and make an edit?" Right? With the writing and the time dedicated to this goes that editing process because none of this can be changed in the future. Once it's submitted, it's submitted. There's errors, the errors go through. If you omitted something, it's omitted. There's not much that you can do. There's potential updates that you can send to the individual programs, but say that you're applying to 30 schools, which I think is like the average 25, 30. I don't know if you would send the update to 25, 30 schools. That's the first thing. And two, I don't think schools would want to see an update because of an error that you or mistake that you just made, right? Because you were not cautious or paying attention to something. So just keep that in mind. That's the reason why we say there's so much lead time because there is very, 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 very limited room for error, if none.
Yeah, I would bank on none. There are very few things that you can adjust and change on the application. Certainly, if you move or your email address changes or things like that, which I want to make a point on email address. When you're creating your applications, use a personal email address. Don't use your school email address. So often I've seen students use their school email address, they graduate, they lose access to that email address, and then they're not getting notifications from schools. I've also seen students have issues with when they are applying, even if they are still active as a student, their school might filter out the emails that are trying to come through from the schools with notifications about secondary applications or interview invitations. And those are things you don't want to miss. So please use a personal email address so that you don't have that issue. And then, like I said, there are very few things you can change. With AACOMAS, they do an academic update 3 times per cycle, and those are specific windows during which you can submit updated grades and transcripts, and they will actually recalculate your GPA
It's good to know.
during
I don't
those
think I knew that.
periods. That to my knowledge, is the only application that does anything like that. I will tell you on the back end, schools do various things with that. Some are looking at those updates more intentionally, and others kind of what you submit is what you submit. So you just need to be aware of that. And then to the point of, yeah, errors, too often I have seen on the back end reviewing applications where a field will say, come back and fill this later. And I'm like, oh no, they did not review their
I hear about that
application.
all the time.
They did not go back and look at this. So before you click submit, I caution you to print out your application. Go field by field. Have someone else look at it with you, because as with everything, you spend so much time looking at something. You know what it should say. You know what you've looked at, and if you have someone else looking at it with you, they could catch your errors. And if you're printing and you're literally looking line by line to review, you can catch those errors so that you aren't in that situation of like, hey, I know I just barely submitted, but I need to let you know that I didn't review my application and I didn't fill out this really important field of information. So, yeah.
That's a good segue into what we're going to talk here about some of the common pitfalls, right, in general, of what happens in this application process. And we've talked a little bit about this multiple roles, activities, the MCAT, school, volunteer work, clinical work. And so in all of this, I think it's good for you to start to think of what's my checklist so that you can keep track of yourself to avoid some of the things that we're going to talk here. Is I would say application timing, people start too late, right? I just waited because I was working on other things. And it's like, okay, so now you're rushing through this process. You're just submitting a little late. You're saying like, no, I'm going to wait for my MCAT scores because I'm not sure yet, or even failing to release your MCAT scores. Just that process in itself could delay your application, right? Because some schools are waiting for that information. Testing again, applying with a low GPA, MCAT, maybe not having conversations.
I just put this up there. Would love to know thoughts on what you want me to ask during our MD and DO panels later, and then with Dr. Ricky Brown during our little fireside keynote at the end. What kind of questions do you have?
I'm going to wait for my semester grades to see if my GPA bumps. I don't know if I'm going to take the MCAT yet. Or you know what? I'm going to retake the MCAT, so I'm going to wait. But I also haven't done any prep. Not understanding that application services calculate the GPA very differently than your undergrad institution or graduate institutions. In essence, the application services take the entire academic history into consideration. Retakes are calculated in that, I would say. They don't do grade replacements. Most institutions, when you take a course, they replace it, and their GPA is calculated differently. MCAS and the application services just push through all grades and calculate it pretty much straightforward through the process, and they do their own conversions and calculations. Mapped, again, is a good software to go in there and see where you're at GPA to see how the application services is going to calculate it. Kristen, what else am I missing here as we move forward?
I had a thought on the application timing and it just left
Yeah.
me. But
I'll come back. It'll come back.
We'll come back. I'll let you know if I remember. But yeah, I think there are strategies, right, with application timing and MCAT scores that you're awaiting. So oftentimes students will apply. They'll apply to that one school, pay that processing fee while they're waiting to get their MCAT scores in. And there are different opinions out there about whether you should apply to what people will call like a throwaway school, a school you know you're not getting in anyway, or a school that your top school that you're applying to no matter what. Of course, you can choose which school if you go this route, you choose which school you designate with that processing fee. But oftentimes, like I said, people will submit their application before they get their scores and then wait for verification to happen while their scores are being released. And then once they have their scores in hand, they can make informed decisions.
I'm going to jump to our friend over at Capier.
For the health systems. But if they have rules and guidelines that they need to follow around hiring, they cannot bend from those rules. So, okay. So now we've talked about kind of what's behind it. Like, why are you either not hearing back or constantly struggling to get clinical jobs? These are the things that are kind of behind that resistance that's making it so challenging. By the way, I will just sort of take a breath here. We kind of launched in. If you do have questions along the way, please let me know. Like, I'd love for this to be interactive. We can definitely talk about it. Anything that's sort of coming up here, if you have questions, you need me to clarify anything. I also will say we are going to be giving away Amazon gift cards at the end of this session. So the people who are interactive and putting their names out there and engaging,
go win
you
some
guys
gift
are gonna
cards.
kind of be automatically entered into the raffle for the gift cards at the end. Okay, so we've talked about what's behind it. Now we're going to talk about where you can go. Because the truth is there are employers that are out there that are more willing to hire people without certifications or experience.
Yep.
What we've seen is that it's very hard to get people to change. So if you are an employer that requires certification, it's very difficult to convince them as a one-off applicant that they should make an exception for you.
Why are they a top choice for you, Trevor? Be interested to know.
Are open to hiring people without certification.
And any specific questions you want me to ask them?
Kind of find those. This is a good way to think about it. We bucket medical practices into 3 categories. The biggest are the hospital systems, right? Those are obvious. Those are the ones that you know in your area. They're hospital based with then like tentacles of ambulatory practices that go throughout a region. They're probably the names that you know in your area that are the big health systems. You know what those are. They're regional specialty groups. These are like orthopedic practices, dermatology practices. They're not hospital affiliated, but they're big. They might be 20, 30, 40 practices across a state or across a couple of regions. And then the third type are independent practices. That's that, traditional doctor, physician-owned, independent practice, very local, maybe 1 to 3 locations. And the general rule is the smaller you go, the more flexible they are in terms of hiring people without certifications or experience. We see a lot of pre-health students kind of default to going after hospital systems. It's the bigger name. It might have some cachet. They clearly have a lot of opportunities. They are by far the most rigid about the rules. The smaller you get, 2 things happen. One, the providers, whether it's the PA or the physician or the nurse practitioner, they're much closer to the hiring practice. They're closer to the hiring process. And they have the ability just to say, like, wow, I'm going to pick Caitlin's name is right in front of me here. Caitlin is amazing, right? She's got all that. She's coming out of college. She's planning on, going to med school or PA school. They see themselves in you and they know you can do the job. And they're much more willing to make exceptions because they see themselves in you. A question we get a lot is, do you need a medical assistant certification to be a medical assistant? And the vast majority of states, like 49 of the 50 states, you do not. But practically, like from a state regulatory standpoint, you can all be MAs tomorrow. But the challenge is employers are the ones that are putting these restrictions in for reasons we talked about. So you got to find the ones that are willing to be more flexible. That's generally a pretty good way to think about it. Go smaller, independent practices. You're probably going to have more luck than the hospital systems, which have much more like rigid hiring rules they need to follow. The other thing to keep in mind is there are definitely some specialty areas that tend to hire more pre-health candidates, right? Dermatology, orthopedics, ophthalmology. I would start putting ENT on that list. I'd start putting urology on that list. Those specialty practices, they are by far more likely to be willing to hire pre-health students even without certifications or experience into jobs. Now, that does not mean that pediatrics doesn't do it or family medicine doesn't do it. They do, but there are less of them. So again, if the idea is to figure out, okay, how do I, in this sort of sea of jobs, how do I focus my time and attention on the ones that are the most likely to be open to hiring me as a pre-health student? This is a way to think about it. Go smaller and focus on certain specialty practices. Any questions at all? I'm going to try to see if I can navigate the chat here. Oh, great. Oh, there are a bunch of questions. I heard anecdotally there have been hiring freezes put in place at hospital systems near me. Is that something you've seen affecting the chances of pre-meds? So I think that may be true in general. It's a very good question. Or that may be true in
So here's a good question. How thoroughly do schools verify the activities or extracurriculars on the applications? I work full-time, and some of my community outreach activities are through my job. Don't want my job to know I'm applying. Very interesting. They don't. I mean, I wouldn't say they don't. Very rarely, if ever. Let's put it that way. But why don't you want your job to know you're applying?
There's one clinical experience.
I'm interested to know that.
Non-clinical to pick for med school.
Live really close to Toro. Awesome.
The good news is there is not. I think people get into med school with lots of different kinds of experience, right? Whether that's in a hospital setting, whether
I'm still
that's
here.
in
I'm just going to be
clinical setting, like
eating a little bit, so I'm
ambulatory
turn my video
setting,
off.
or even a community health setting. I think a lot of it really depends, and these are great questions to ask today for people who are probably more application centric. But there are lots of different kinds of experience. I think a lot of it has to do with what you're actually doing. So the reason why, say, medical assistant is one that's really common and kind of highly sought after by pre-med and pre-PA students is because the work you do as a medical assistant is generally considered very high quality. But that doesn't mean that people don't get into med school or PA school with a CNA. They absolutely do. It's just different kinds of work. EMT is another one. Again, just different kinds of work. Let me try to take on some of these questions here. Any time of clinical experience you think would give a non-traditional student an edge on medical?
Susan, I work in a completely unrelated field. I'm not sure my job would remain secure if they thought I was looking at a career change. Okay, makes sense.
A lot of it has to do with what you're actually.
Good luck. Fingers crossed.
But medical assistant, EMT, CNA, those are very common and very much like you can look at the pre-health competencies that the medical schools put out in terms of like, this is what we're looking for. And you can map what they're looking for to those three positions pretty easily. People do scribe also. I think scribe is people get into med school as scribes. I think with PA school, it's a lot harder. Scribing may be easier to get in terms of certification. I think it's probably a notch down in terms of the quality of the experience, just because you're not interacting with patients the same way. Let's see here. What are some good certifications to start with if you're not sure what clinical experience you need? So I would say the most common, right, medical assistant is definitely, well, let me actually back up. Every single person should get a BLS CPR certification. No matter what job you're looking at, they're going to want you to have that. So no matter what, get that.
We got our AACOMAS video back again. Sorry about that. I really do like it though. It's got a good beat. I wanted to come back over here, see what the medical school HQ team is talking about. This topic is how to apply to medical school, overview of the application services. There we go.
I do recommend that when you do ask, you say, you give them some context. Say, I'm applying to medical school. Here's kind of my timeline. I would love to be able to request a letter of recommendation from you because they do require an XYZ type of letter. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to write a great letter on my behalf. And if so, what do you need from me between now and then to help me or to help you write that letter about me? So that gives them one kind of an out if they're like, this time frame is not great, or I'm not sure that I could write that letter today, but here's what I would need from you between now and then to be able to write a great letter. I think that kind of goes to that point of one, building relationships, but then also giving them time, giving them context, and giving them as much information as you can. I will say often we have students who are asked to write letters for their letter writer. And this is one of my biggest pet peeves. And I strongly advise that you not write those letters, and that you professionally convey that, I have signed a confidentiality agreement saying that I will not write that letter, or I will not see those letters, so I don't feel comfortable writing that letter. But what I can do is give you all the information that you need that would be helpful. And so I often recommend writing a letter that's a formal request and saying, just as a reminder, here's how you know me, essentially. Like, I took this class from you during this semester. These are things that I think I conveyed, in these discussions or interactions that we've had. And then you kind of give them everything they need to write the letter. But I don't know what your opinion is on this, Carlos, but I think students absolutely should not
Interesting.
be writing
Trevor, ask
letters of
Stephen Davis from Toro what global contributions the graduates make. It seems like that is a focus from the school. What about what the school talks about focuses on the global side of things? It's a very interesting.
I'm not even going to add because I like you. I feel like
My mic stand is loose. I'm trying to just tighten it. I'd be interested to know what they try to focus on. It's interesting.
Coursework and entries. Moving on from letters of recommendation, right? Entering coursework exactly as has appeared on a transcript. We talked a little bit about this. Each application service does a conversion of the coursework if they don't do grid replacements. So that's why they ask for transcripts to verify. They look at line by line, course by course, grade by grade. I think ordering transcripts too late, right? At the peak of, oh, they need to verify my application. Now I need to wait, and your school takes 2 weeks to process an transcript. You have to get all those in a timely fashion into the application services. And then again, not including repeated dual enrollment and transfer courses. Again, line by line. Internet, what are they called? IB courses, international baccalaureate courses.
Yeah.
Foreign, what do you call it? Exchange courses you took at an institution across um, in a different country, and then you're coming back. Enter it as it would appear on your transcript that you transferred it back. So there's good information on that again, for everybody that's entering coursework. And then we get finally to secondary applications, right? You can start pre-writing for that. Don't start slow, or not submit too slowly, meaning like if you're dragging it on for a month or 2 months, just submit an application to a school that sent it to you at the beginning of the month. I would say that's too late, right? If there's a timely fashion, I would say a week. Return, I'd say the first one's going to take you probably a little longer, but once you get into the cadence of things, you start to feel like you're moving forward fairly quickly. Recycling, and by that is not really removing the information that you put for one school, right? You say school A, I'm applying to this, and then you submit that to school B. Again, you can't make any changes once it's submitted, even to those programs, so you have to be very mindful of that. And then not answering the questions with secondary essays, specifically being very vague, again, right? Generic, cliche, but not answering the specifics that they're asking you in that question. So, Kristen, anything else?
No, I think that's great. I think we're about out of time, but we've got a couple of questions here.
Yeah.
So timeline, when can you start to apply? So as was mentioned earlier, applications open in May every year to start the following year. So it takes a year and then some. So you apply in May to start the following, like July or August is typically when schools are starting. So then you kind of have to walk back from there. And then it's a matter of making sure that you have, your all of your prerequisite courses required, or your required.
Hello, everyone who's joining now. I got a few more people on. I'm streaming live. This is MappdCon 2025 happening now over at MappdCon.com. I'm here answering questions as well, kind of armchair quarterbacking what's going on, jumping around to a couple sessions. If you go check out MappdCon without even registering, you can go check out the agenda, see what's coming up here at the top of the hour. We have lots of great sessions happening all the time. next, I can come over here, MappdCon.com, can look at the agenda from here. So if I come here,
We also have
so essays for your PA school application happening now, how to apply to medical school happening now. That's the session I have on now. We have RT from Cap Year talking about clinical experience. Accelerate your healthcare journey, certificate to career. This is advanced e-clinical coming up next. How to become a PA coming up next. Actually just switched over. Pathway to building a strong application for med school. That one's coming up. All these are at the top of the hour. They say live because the sessions technically start, at least letting people into the room 5 minutes early. But we have Courtney Dunford, formerly Lewis, and Dr. Christine Crispin coming and doing a session about building a strong application. So we just had Carlos and Kristen giving a conversation about the applications themselves. And now our next team members coming on talking about how to make a strong application.
I'm going to move our slide just to put this in case you guys want to look at our services. Yes and no. My experience has been that there is more conversation, especially if your MCAT was here and you took it, then it took a dip, and then you went back and retook it, and then it increased. I would say there has to be some major differentiation in that dip, because the concern comes of what happened here. Like, why didn't this person really take a step back to reevaluate? And I think med schools always look towards what is.
Can you also ask what they do to impact the community in Vallejo? Yeah, I can. I'll try to add that stuff in.
Have to may potentially provide additional services, which they do, but I think all of that stuff starts to play into mind of what is it going to take to get you through the program. At the end of the day, I will say, having been on the student affairs side of things, medical schools don't admit students just to admit students and say like, well, if we lose 50%, it's all good, right? They admit students to hopefully graduate the same amount of students that they sort of have coming in.
Yep.
And so when they have these conversations of academic performance or MCAT performance, there's a lot of conversation again, because what is it going to take to get you through? Is it going to then maybe be that it's going to take you a little bit more to get through the program? These are all, again, hypothetical conversations that could potentially happen. But to this question specifically, I would say it depends.
Yeah.
How about your
And it looks
opinion?
like we are over time, and we're being told that we have to end this session so that they can start the next one. So apologies for having to kind of cut short and not get to all of your questions. Here is a little bit about our advising services. You can scan the QR code to read more about them. Use that promo code. I'm realizing you can't see it. It's MappdCon 25, MappdCon 25, and you'll get 15% off all advising services offered through medical school headquarters. And then, as Carlos mentioned before, we do host our pre-med office hours every Wednesday. So if you have more questions, join us on pre-med office hours and we can get to those. But again, apologies for having to wrap up, but thank you for being here with us today. This has been a fun time.
Go team.
Yeah, thank
Lots
you
of
so
great
much for
engagement.
joining us.
All right,
Yeah,
let's go jump to another
go
session.
on our website, look for us. We'll be here the whole day. I have another session coming out. Kristen, you probably have another session.
Yep.
So
All right, let's go to another session. Check it out. Let's go here. So we got Courtney, Christine. That's weird. It doesn't have her EDD on there, but it does. Oh, that's really weird. May refresh. Could have sworn I saw it on there earlier. There they are. Yeah, see, it's there. All right, this session coming on here in a minute. What questions do you guys have for me? Again, I'm here answering questions, just streaming as well. the sessions, kind of behind the scenes, but happy to answer any questions that you all have as well. Hope you're all having a wonderful Saturday. Any good football you all are looking forward to today? My Florida Gators are playing LSU after a very disappointing loss last weekend. Again, we're streaming MappdCon today, and I'll be jumping off here to go moderate a couple panels. One at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, I believe. 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Hello, what's up, chicos? UT Georgia, definitely looking forward to that. I am definitely rooting for Tennessee. And hope they can pull out a win. It's time for Georgia's reign to end. Alabama, their reign has ended. Georgia, it's time for them to take a notch down. Florida, one of these days we'll come back. Oh man, so hard, so hard. I hope you're all doing wonderful. It's been a crazy week. Obviously, tons of stuff in the news, lots of tragedy. So I hope you're taking care of yourself. Hug some loved ones, say hello. Oh, man. Again, this is MappdCon.com. Our session here is still waiting to start here. It's coming soon. We've had over 3,000 students register, close to 700 people live. So super excited about that. I played against UT's quarterback in JUCO, and he had like 500 on us. Oh, man. What's his name? Joey Aguilar or something. Yeah. Poor Nico. Nico at UCLA is struggling. So, oh, well. I didn't see the final of that game last night.
I am Christine Crispin. I'm one of the
I'm assuming they lost.
Advisors at MSHQ, and I'll let my colleague introduce herself, and we'll tell us a little bit about tell you a little bit about ourselves.
Yeah, so my name's Courtney Dumford, formerly Lewis, back in my early career days. So that's what a lot of people know me by. Also one of the MSHQ pre-med advisors. We both come from, I think, backgrounds of a lot of grading and evaluating of med school applicants during our careers and sitting on AACOMAS and things like that. So, and I think Christine, you also have things doing with counseling pre-meds as they go through the pre-med process too. So here to show a wealth of information if we can.
Yes. We are here to talk about kind of helping you get through to build a pathway to a strong application. So we look at this as kind of the roadmap of all the things to do and some of the things to think about along the way as you are thinking about these activities as they relate to your application. So let's get started.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
So good. Yeah. It's good that you guys are starting now and want to get going on it because there's a lot to track.
You know, just to pivot off that, Courtney, I think it's something you start at as a freshman, right? I think you take really all 4 years of your academic career and plot it and plan it out accordingly. And I think obviously people come into this experience late, and that's perfectly fine, but it takes a few years, as this says. It's so much. And I don't know about you, but I am known for being a proponent of gap years. And really my number one reason is how much work it takes to get to this place.
Yeah. I think post-COVID more and more, and I don't know if you saw it at your school, but in working with candidates now for the past 3-4 years with Dr. Gray, I think most end up doing a gap year just because post-COVID, a lot of things have changed post-COVID. It's a little bit harder to get shadowing. It's a little bit harder to come by clinical if you don't have certain certifications and things like that. And so, and with how many things you guys are asked to kind of expose yourself to, learn and grow, and gather together, it really is challenging. And so everybody's pacing is slightly different. We're going to give you a couple of options on how to work through it, how to piece it together, but we'll kind of run down what you need, why you need it, things like that as we go along.
All right. So this just, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these, and Courtney chime in.
Yeah.
If you ever want to know what are they looking for in med school, and let's be very clear, this is pretty inclusive of MD, DO, Texas, all things. I know these are the competencies from the AAMC, but generally, if you want to ever know what somebody is looking for, please look at this list. These are the competencies that they have decided, and by they, I mean admissions advisors and admissions deans have decided this is what they want to see.
What do you all think about the core competencies?
And this comes from your academics, from your experiences, from your interviews, from your personal statement, from your letters of recommendation. You're not going to click a box and check off one thing. This is just inclusive and growth.
Yeah. I think this will give you a good heads up into kind of why we're telling you to do some things. It's for the development of these aptitudes and competencies, because you need to be able to hit the ground running as soon as you start medical school. You're going to have people asking for your opinion. You're going to be having to write things, present things, see patients, be out in the community, and be able to carry a fairly heavy load. And so a lot of these things you need to be working on kind of personal development now as you go along, because they will be looking for these to view you as prepared to start medical school.
Yep. Yeah. All right. And you can actually find these on a Google search. Just Google AAMC core competencies for entering medical students, and all of this, plus what it means, will be there for you to look at. So you can easily find this. And by the way, we have the ask a question. As we're going through this, if you have a question about something we're talking about, please throw it in chat so we can get to that by the end of the session. Okay. I always like to get this one out of the way first. You want to start?
Sure. Okay. Well, obviously, academics are going to be important, and everybody's academic journey will look just slightly different. That is taken into account to some degree, but there's a lot of kind of data points that they're going to be referencing to try to assess if they feel like you can handle the course load, and have the foundational information and coursework done to a level that they can build upon, because once it starts, it doesn't stop and it moves quickly. So there's a couple of GPAs that you guys need to be aware of and kind of tracking as you go. There's a cumulative GPA, which we probably all know just means the totality of your GPA. They are interested in seeing your science GPA. I will say that each platform does track the science GPA just a little bit differently. So to make it perfectly confusing, it's not necessarily going to be the science GPA that you see on your transcripts. It's going to be what they're taking into account as they put together what qualifies for them. Again, a quick Google search on what qualifies under your science GPA. But on the MD side, they like to see calculus, statistics, some of the math type stuff. On the DO side, they don't take into consideration math into the science GPA, things like that. So you'll want to understand those nuances as you go. And then as you go from undergrad, post-bac, and master's, also the GPA kind of changes from there as well. So,
just a quick throw out. Just remember, like if you take a course and you don't perform as well as you had hoped, and please don't think that that's the end of your journey, because it's not. But if you don't perform the way you hope to, they also calculate a retake. Like many colleges will replace, like they'll allow you to, if you get a C or below in any course, most times they will allow you to retake and replace a grade. And that boosts your college transcript GPA. It will not change. Well, it will slightly adjust in your medical school application, but all grades count. So there is no replacing. So I think all of us rarely would I advise you to retake a course unless you get a C- or below in a prerequisite, because you have to have a C or better in a prerequisite.
Yep.
The other thing
Oh,
to remember as you're going through classes is collecting letters of recommendation and starting to network as early as you can, because 2, 3 years, 4 years after this class, the potential stands that you're going to ask them for a letter of recommendation. Schools have different requirements. Again, I like perfectly confusing. I think that is the perfect example of med school. It's perfectly confusing and it's a little bit chaotic. And they all,
yeah.
every single school will have a slightly different variation of what they want in a letter. And so we couldn't tell you, even if we wanted to tell you, we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So science letters, non-science letters, these are people that you're going to start engaging with to get those letters.
Mhm. Should be attending office hours. I'm
Get
going to
to
say,
know them.
yeah, sit in the front. You shouldn't be sitting in the back. They should know your face. You should have interfaced more than just doing well on their exams. If you expect them to write you a strong letter, which is what you're going to ask them for.
So Trevor, when you're calculating GPA, your own science GPA, you don't have to calculate it. The application services do. At the end of the day, what we're talking about when we're saying like science versus non-science is that's how the application services and the schools kind of break down your GPA. So if you go to mappd.com, you can enter in all of your courses there. You'll have to check which ones are science, which ones aren't. Unfortunately, we just don't have the data yet to automatically say what is science and what is not. But ultimately, you'll want to know what your science GPA is. You'll want to know what your non-science GPA is, because that's how medical schools are going to be judging your application potentially. And so if you go to AMCAS, AACOMAS, TMDSAS, if you look at the course classification guides, they're typically called, they will tell you what those look like. And I'll just pull one up here. So if I do AACOMAS course classifications, they're very different than um, the AMCAS course classifications, because AACOMAS doesn't consider math a science. So it doesn't count towards your science grades. And so you can see here, based on GPA calculation, these behavioral sciences are non-science GPA. And then if we come down here, biochemistry does count as GPA, and here are the typical courses. At the end of the day, when you're entering your grades, you classify the courses as you think they should be, and then the application services will adjust for that.
I think coming back to non-trad, there's usually provisions in place, understanding if you've been out of school, usually like 3 years or more,
Yeah.
you've probably lost connections with some of your professors, so you can insert supervisors. But again, each school will look for something different. So,
Yep.
want to do
Pay attention to
MCAT? Let's tackle MCAT. It's no one's favorite exam. I don't think I've ever heard somebody say that they very much enjoyed sitting for the MCAT. But it's a very important test. It's likely here to stay. It's meant to assess kind of foundational information and your critical reasoning and things like that. It is important. Um, First takes matter, I would say, in that you never want to rush sitting for it and just hope
Yeah.
for a miracle. You, I haven't seen a miracle happen when people do that. If they have been doing the practice exams and they're
So is the
getting
letter
much
packet
lower
different than a
they
committee
do
letter?
that.
It is. So letter packets and committee letters are both offered by pre-health committees, depending on your pre-health office. If your pre-health office doesn't do a letter packet or a committee letter, that's perfectly fine. That's not an issue. A letter packet generally is where the committee gathers the letters and then writes a cover sheet, typically, that just kind of says, here's who you are, and then sends the letters as a packet, as just one letter to the application service. A committee letter is generally much more robust, where you're writing a personal statement, you're doing a mock interview potentially with your committee. They're also gathering letters of recommendations from other people, and then they synthesize all of that into a letter, and then that letter goes to the application services sometimes with the other letter, sometimes without.
Right.
They are looking at your subsections. So let's say you've got, 130s across the board, except for cars being at a 121.
123. Oh.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem, you guys. Like
Yeah.
you can't have one just fall off a cliff there. And so you're going to want to sit, 124, 126 or above in the subsections if you can.
Yeah.
That will keep some doors from closing, but you know, we don't necessarily have to give you concrete numbers. I'm just going to tell you that they're looking at the subsections. They're looking at how many takes you have, how quickly you rush a retake. And if that's advisable, we can kind of talk about that at some point. If you have an advisor to talk to, you may want to check in to see if they think that you should resit quickly. But yeah,
I would never rush a retake. I'll just say
I
this.
agree.
You need to speak with someone before you say, I'm just going to retake it in a month. I can't think of.
So if my school only offers a letter packet, should I bother to get it? I'm also storing mine on Interfolio. How would that work? Why Interfolio? Why not Mapped? My LORs on Mapped. You don't have to get a letter packet. If you are gathering all of your letters on Interfolio already, or that your plan is to, if you already have letters on Interfolio, I would just be careful, because if you're not applying until next cycle and you already have your letters, those letters are really early. And Interfolio, unlike my LORs, Interfolio will tell the medical schools when the letters got uploaded into Interfolio. And so if they've been sitting on there for a few months, it may not look great. But you don't have to get a letter packet from your school if you don't want to. You may be asked about it. Someone may know, hey, like I know your school offers a letter packet. Why didn't you get one? But you just answer.
I don't think there's any more we can belabor. So this is probably the next most often asked question. So we'll spend a little bit of our time here as well.
Yeah, it can be confusing. So things that generally qualify, I would say EMT,
Yep.
medical assisting, scribing, phlebotomy,
patient care
tech, yeah, things
CNA.
like that. Yeah. There's a lot that does not qualify, you guys, and a lot of people are out there doing it thinking that it is going to, and it's not. So you want to crush some dreams here.
I have a t-shirt. It says Dream Killer.
Yeah.
Literally have the t-shirt. I think
poor dream
I will
killers.
say this. What's the common thread is that you're engaging with physicians, you're engaging with patients. And so you want to be in a setting that allows you to touch and talk and speak and hear and engage. A hospital patient transporter, not the best, because you're just wheeling them either to discharge or from point A to point B. A hospital volunteer, there are certain types of volunteer. If you're a volunteer that allows you to engage with patient, answering patient calls and doing stuff like that, that's probably more in line with what they're looking for. But if you're just volunteering in a gift shop or in the ED and answering calls and directing patients, probably not. Or not directing patients, directing families, it's probably not going to be the ideal.
Yeah.
A pharmacy tech. I hear this a lot, and I have
Poor doggy.
never given much credence to a pharmacy tech, primarily because it's more in a retail environment.
Yeah.
You are learning things, you are engaging with things, but I just don't give it the credence that I've never given it the same value as I would something else.
Yeah, I think that's fairly consistent.
Yeah.
I think that's consistent across the board. Yeah.
Yeah. Hospice volunteer. I think I will preface this by saying I think there is significant value in hospice volunteering. And I think every single pre-med should engage with it 100%. I think you understand dignity behind death. I think you understand seeing people who are literally at their most vulnerable.
Yeah.
Um, but I also would not want that to be your primary clinical experience.
Yeah.
I
That,
think you have to have physician and patient interactions. Courtney, what's your thought on that?
no, I absolutely agree. I see very often students doing kind of enrichment activities at hospice centers and things like that, which is wonderful. It could count towards some of your volunteer hours and things like that, but it's rarely counted as clinical because it's not direct hands-on patient style care. You're sitting with residents and things like that. I think another one that kind of catches people off guard is shadowing is not clinical, you guys.
Yeah.
So
Not
that does
clinical.
not qualify. You need it, and there's a section for it, but it does not count under your clinical hours.
Yeah.
And I think there's hopefully kind of an obvious reason why they want you to have clinical hours and experiences and exposures if you're saying that you're passionate about patient care and dealing with patients essentially for the rest of your life from all walks of life in clinical settings, whether it's private practice or county hospitals or things like that. You need this exposure. You need to really understand what you're getting into. You should see patients in different clinical settings if possible, but you need to be hands-on with it to start to get an understanding on if this is truly your calling and your passion. They want you to have that.
Yep. And I see a lot of questions coming in. Does this count? Does this count? Does this count? There's a
Right.
myriad of things that have count that we have not touched. Yes,
Yeah.
medical assistant counts. Yes, working for an ophthalmologist, even an optometrist, maybe if you're engaging with patients. If you're
Yeah.
fitting glasses, maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
Um, there's so many things that we're probably not going to get to touch on that would qualify. But you have to really ask yourself, what is the primary role of the position that I'm in? And if you know that your primary role is engaging with patients, you're in the room with the physician and you're kind of in the appointment or you're rooming them, you're doing the vitals, you're helping them, then probably lean in that direction. It'll work.
Yeah. I know people ask about kind of the tangential things, kind of like the optometrist or physical therapy aides or dental, things like that. While they may qualify, yes,
The
you're
strength.
going for a role of a physician. And so it's going to potentially, depending on the situation, it may carry less weight. And they may ask you, well, why physician and not physical therapist? All of your
Right,
clinical is with physical therapy. Why are you not pursuing this?
right.
So it does present questions to the ADCOM on whether you have enough knowledge on the role of a physician specifically and dealing with those types of things. So you want to move
Yeah,
on? We can move on. Okay.
yeah. So shadowing.
Yeah.
Um, why should you shadow? So, first and foremost, they do want to know that you understand a little bit about what you're getting into. I have always kind of had a gradient of clinical experience. Shadowing has always been my first entry into like the healthcare profession. Is this even something I want to see? It's a day in the life. You're hanging out with a physician and just kind of observing and watching.
Mhm.
I think there's so much value in it in terms of what you can learn and what you can gain from it, even if it is a more passive learning experience.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wonder how many hours of shadowing do I need? How many,
Yeah.
how many, how many, how many? Get what you can get, honestly. If it can give you some breadth and depth of understanding, like we said, of those different clinical experiences, different day in the life, different patient populations, things like that, then you're all the more prepared
Yep.
and you have, better scope of that. Sometimes that is a very hard to come by option. So
Yes.
anything is better than zero. Let's say that you have to
Yeah.
have it. But it's something that longitudinally you should always keep your eye out for and be tracking and trying to find these opportunities to gain that insight, to make connections of people in the field that you're trying to get into. And again, one of the letters that you're going to be asking for is a physician And so you will want to be on your best behavior. And also, if you want to work with somebody repeatedly or shadow them repeatedly, you will need to kind of chart that out and be
I'm from
mindful
Orlando.
of
It's super
that
hard to get
instead of
shadowing.
doing that.
30 hours, 20 plus upcoming. That's fantastic.
It does
How would you
qualify.
combine that with online shadowing through mitigators and scribing? I would not combine it with scribing at all. Scribing is scribing. It's not shadowing. So I wouldn't try to separate out shadowing from scribing. I would list mitigators as virtual shadowing on there. It's not going to matter much at this point. Virtual shadowing just doesn't have a ton of impact. I would list it as one activity, total hours, date span, and then just list who you've been shadowing. But you have a good amount of shadowing. It's great. Keep going.
Different types of patient care, long-term relationships with certain physicians, kind of a in and out acute situation where they come in, you treat, and they go. And you kind of start getting a feel for what appeals to you, which I think is the value of shadowing. Um, do you want to develop that relationship over weeks and months and years where you're like, how's the kids? How's the grandkids? Now the grandkids and the kids are your patients type of thing? Or is it, do you really like the acute thing where you come in, you have a problem, you solve it, you fix it, and they go, and then the next person comes in?
I I think I see a question here that's a very common one. Can you pull shadowing hours kind of while you're on the job
Yeah, I was gonna.
out of things that you're doing? No.
Yeah,
Nope,
you
sure
can.
can. That's a pretty solid no. Anytime you're on the job, what you're doing is part of your job. These need to be set aside, dedicated. You are fully clocked in to just shadowing. So no, those wouldn't qualify, even though yes, you will be shadowing physicians in a lot of roles that are clinical based, but they will not qualify. You can't pull them out.
The other thing that I would say is you can still be reflective and learning. And even if you're standing there and you're technically shadowing, even if you're actively working, you still can learn. That doesn't, this, the learning, that the engagement that you can have in the questions that you would ask yourself or you ask your physician can still happen, even if it doesn't quote unquote count as shadowing. Please don't negate the value of that either.
Yeah. And final thing I'll say, a lot of people are like, is this better than this or things like that?
Right.
Again, look at your application. If you're an ER scribe and that's going to carry kind of the weight of your clinical hours, maybe you go and scribe for a primary care clinic or a specialty clinic or something different and not just go and
If I'm
shadow for
shadowing
an ER
on my
physician.
lunch break, is that
Yeah,
different? Yeah, I mean, if you're clocked out,
give yourself a narrow
that's great.
view. So you
Not a
can use
problem.
this as
It's funny. They kind of gave a hard no into separating shadowing from a job. There's one job that I often talk about, and that's a clinical research coordinator. And I specifically talk about that one because I have direct experience with that role from a patient and parent of a patient side of things, where we've interacted with clinical research coordinators and I've seen their role. And oftentimes they are just sitting around waiting and shadowing during that time. And so I'll often say, like, separate those hours. At the end of the day, the biggest thing that you don't want to do is double dip your time. That's the biggest thing.
I think this is going to come based on my own experiences
There's
of
another
working
question
in
here.
specialty
Also, if
institutions.
we
So
enjoyed
if
one
I was
specialty a
studying
lot,
at
should
my
we give it
tribal
more
medical
attention when
school
writing, and
and
why? Or
research
would it
institutions.
be
So
too much since
my
it's just shadowing?
preference
I would say it's
is
too
that
much.
you
It's
have
just
to have
shadowing.
some research. It doesn't have to be the most
You
important
can,
aspect
depending on how
of your
many
application,
specialties
unless
you've
you're like a
shadowed,
PhD candidate.
kind of the bullet points that you list,
But if you're going in straight
if
from
there's room for a little bit of kind of dialogue and reflection, awesome, and talk about, I really enjoyed X, Y, or Z. I don't think you need to go into why you enjoyed one more than the other to add that comparison. Just talk about your experience overall.
as a company, we pull in reapplicants and we look at their applications and say, wow, there's 2,000 hours in a wet lab and
Yes.
100 hours of clinical. You're a little lopsided.
Yeah. Reverse
How are
that.
you? Yeah, how are you showing that you're wanting to be a physician? So don't let it dominate your application. It can be valuable. Think about the type of institutions you're applying to as well. Like Christine said, the ones that she was at valued some research experience. You know, if you think about like Johns Hopkins, they would probably value it. They receive
Oh,
a lot of funding for their research, right? And
mhm.
so it makes sense that they would value people who have already had exposure, who enjoy doing it, who can add value to their labs. But then there's other schools that don't place quite as much value. It's not required by a majority of medical schools. Can it add value? It can. Um,
Mhm.
the weight of that value will differ.
Yeah. But if you're going to do it, I this is always the example I think about. In early 2021, when the COVID vaccine was coming out, I have a medical condition. I was fortunate to be offered the vaccine in January of 2021 by virtue of working at Keck. And I reached
Hmm.
out to my physician and I was like, hey, he knows my medical history. I'm being offered the vaccine. How do I manage the vaccine? Like, do I take it? Do I not? I'm not sure. And my physician, who is not an MD PhD, he's just an internal medicine doc. I don't mean to negate that, but he's an internal medicine doc. And he's like, yes, here's what you do. And he
Hmm.
gave me the layout because he understands the research behind the vaccines. He understands the interaction with my particular condition and how to manage it. That's
Hmm.
your job as a physician. And so when you understand research and you can navigate it, that's how you use it, even if you're not a researcher.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Uh, you
This,
know how I feel about this one.
this is a big one, you guys. You need to put some hours into this. I think it's a little undervalued and
One.
it's very valued by the AdCom.
Yep.
I I wish, well, we're doing it now. I was like, I wish more people understood, like, this is important. You're going to be exposed to so many different people. You need to understand resources, the barriers people face. You need to have interfaced with, as many people as you can to have gained an understanding, gotten out of your bubble, and you're going into a service industry. You need to know how to serve and what that looks like and what's valuable to different people and what cultural customs come into play. There's This is a huge topic, and
I
it's so valuable.
100%. And by the way, community volunteering engagement is not volunteering in a hospital.
Right.
It is not volunteering in a clinical setting generally. There's one exception to that in my mind, but even still, I think there should be
Let's see. Currently, an academic victim of MCAT prep. What does that even mean? I'm an academic victim of MCAT prep. Should I write about my most meaningful experience right now since it's kind of fresh? Quit 1 month ago to focus on MCAT. Yeah, there's no problem with that. If you're not going to write specifically the activity, journal about it and kind of write about what you want to write about in the future. Volume is very low. I turned the volume down of of the session so I could talk over it if that's what you're talking about.
It will pay benefits not just in your personal growth, coming back to those core competencies. How do you think you develop those? Right? If you just go and do all of these things that we're talking about with your blinders on to just collect the hours, I've just got to go and collect the hours, you're missing the full and entire point of why the med schools are asking you to
Yeah.
do them. It's to drive growth, to drive insight, to drive experience and exposure. You have to go in and look for how you can make an impact, how something can make you better, how you can leave something you did
Yes.
better, right?
Yes.
Just go in and be actively engaged. It's so important. And if you guys are thinking about like, well, what makes a candidate stand out on an application? That's what
This.
makes them stand out. They go in and they invest in these experiences, and it's very clear once you've read over 30,000 med school applications who was actively engaged and who looked for opportunities to add value in some way. some way or have an impact.
I would say, in my personal opinion, this is as equally as important as clinical work. Like I tell my
I think a
students,
lot of AdComs think that now.
I work at
I
the
tell my students,
front
so
desk
clinical work
in
is
radiology,
as
and sometimes one
important
of the
as
radiologists would
job
explain or
description.
show the read to me. Then I would then call the ordering doctor to give the results. That's just admin. Yeah, I would just consider that admin.
There's research. Those are the main activities. Community service and clinical never
Yeah.
stop. Period.
It's kind of
Full
crazy
stop.
that you would be the one giving the results to the ordering doc. That seems a little inappropriate, but hey, go for it. Good for you.
There are just as many schools now that really devote service. I can
100%.
rattle off about 5 off the top of my head that come to mind.
Yeah. I
Georgetown,
think
Blue, Rush, these are very
Mhm.
service community focused programs. If you're interested in public health, you should be doing service.
Yeah. Schools in Arizona are also very focused on
Creighton,
working with underserved. Yep.
yep,
U of A.
so
Yep.
many.
There's a
Schools in
lot of them.
California, even if they value research 100%, they also value service.
Yep.
So, anyway, I guess I've gotten on my soapbox. I'll go on now.
It's important, you guys. That's why we're speaking like so directly and so vigorously about that. You need to participate and you need to be actively engaged in it.
Clubs and organizations, we can briefly touch on this one. I think
Yeah.
they also want you to be not just a one note, right? I don't want you
Yeah.
to be just a medical student. And I think you guys lose sight of being in college and being a college student. So get engaged. And I do not mean just get engaged with AMSA or whatever pre med fraternity, pre health
Should I
fraternity.
add PA shadowing if they work side by side with a physician as well?
Be a part of a club
I
or
would say
organization,
if
something that
you're
wants you to
shadowing a
go ahead.
physician and a PA just happens to be there, I wouldn't add the PA to that.
Here's another big one.
If you're shadowing a PA because they work in the same office as the physician and at that particular patient encounter, it's the PA that you're shadowing, you can add that. I would just make sure you have more physician shadowing than PA shadowing if you're applying to medical school.
I've seen it come through
Leadership.
community service where you get to train new volunteers and you get to start some. I have
Projects.
some students who have started projects that kind of
Yep.
connect maybe the club or organization they're in to things within the community. They're founding whatever. I've seen it come through in a clinical room where you train new scribes or new volunteers or new medical assistants. There's so many variations of this. You're a lead tutor.
Yeah. And
On the list is fairly exhaustive and endless. It's be a leader,
yeah.
demonstrate leadership. It doesn't even, maybe you don't even have a role. You can still demonstrate leadership in your
Right.
application.
Yep. And it can be in things outside of school as well. I've had people who work at McDonald's and were managers there. They get offers. I'll tell you, they get offers. There's high turnover. You have to deal with a lot of timing dynamics. You have to do all the ordering. It's a customer service focused thing. I mean, they love that stuff because it requires a lot out of you, but you're responsible for things.
This question comes up a lot. Could tutoring be considered leadership? Tutoring, I don't consider leadership. Just that's my kind of philosophy on tutoring. But the bigger reason is because tutoring is its own section on the AMCAS application. I wouldn't include it as leadership. I don't think being a TA, being a tutor, I don't think that's being a leader. You're being a tutor. And so that's just kind of my ideology around that. And specifically because it's its own section. So I wouldn't consider them the same.
Student doctor. So it's something that you should give yourself an opportunity.
Can
to
sports be
develop.
considered leadership? Potentially. Here's the interesting thing. At the end of the day, my opinion doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you have to decide how you want to categorize the activities that you are going to write about. And so you have to think about the activity, the angle that you want to come at, the rest of your application, potentially trying to fill some gaps. You don't want to force things that just don't fit. And how you are going to write about the things, is it going to come off as leadership, or is it going to come off as a sports activity that you're trying to force into leadership? So it really just depends. If you're like the coach, you run a community service organization for coaching soccer or something, that could be leadership.
Dude, are you kidding me right now? And we had this full-on fun conversation.
Where would intramural sports fall into the application and hobbies? I think there is a. Oh, let me see. MCAS activities. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head
They're
the
some of the easiest connection points, right? To just being
um
being outside of your job.
the different sections, different
And
categories.
you never know if
I can't
they
remember them off the top of my head. If intramural activities is one of them.
when people are intramural soccer, fast friends with that. I can already place you there or shared things. So it can be helpful. Also, they see if this is a way for you to kind of de-stress kind of self-regulate, point yourself back true north. Do you have things like that add
Yeah,
value
it may
to your
just be
life that
hobby or
and you
extracurricular
mentally,
activity,
physically,
just
spiritually well
generically extracurricular
as you
activity.
do this? Because if all you've been doing
There
is
is
hyper focusing on collecting
intercollegiate
hours
athletics, but
and
I
you're
wouldn't put
not
intramurals in that.
living besides that, it's gonna, again, part of your development is gonna be a bit stunted, or you're gonna have some challenges with burnout or setting boundaries and things like that once, because it just keeps adding. So they do like to see that you have passions and things that you enjoy doing.
I actually will say, is that something you think you could continue in medical school? Like I've asked that in an interview. I do it in
Yeah.
mocks and I do it in live interviews.
Yep.
All right. So now let's talk
Yep.
about this part as it relates to your. So we've kind of talked about all the things that I think feed into your application. Now let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about how you think about it. Um, Reflection is absolutely key. I don't know, Courtney, when I've sat with somebody and tried to talk about their personal statement or their activities, if they haven't done this, it's the worst experience ever because they've
Challenging.
done it to check off a box and now they don't know how to write about it.
Yeah. And time passes by pretty quickly. This time can kind of fly by, but some of these things we can't tell you. This is your story. This is your journey. This is your growth. We can help you with, workshopping phrasing and things like that, but we're not going to know your story and how passionately you feel about something. We can't feed that to you. So you really need to do some journaling and some thinking on this. But yeah, reflections are incredibly valuable.
So you have to decide. I mean, I would think for every experience you're doing, particularly clinical service, those types of things, you should be reflecting, thinking about a patient care experience, thinking about an engagement with somebody within your community. Um, all of these questions are things even shadowing, by the way, I think some of the best reflections can come out of shadowing because you're really totally focused on what's happening and you have that opportunity. Um, and you want to start tracking this because I guarantee you in 3 years, you're not going to remember that one experience. It's human nature, right? So track it, whether you go with Mapped and you include there's spaces for you to track your time, your hours, and your reflections in there. So then in 3 years, in 4 years, and whatever the time frame is, I sit there and say, okay, let's get ready to start your personal statement. Why do you want to be a doctor? And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I want to help people. Well, what experiences have you had? Well, I was a shadow, but I don't remember anything. Oh my God. And
Don't remember anything.
it's a struggle.
It's a struggle. Yeah.
So I cannot, again, this is so critically important to your overall application. And if you're a little late to reflecting and tracking, start now.
Yep.
Just start now.
It's going to be a book of your primary application and
It is.
potentially your secondary, and how.
And interviews.
Yeah, true. Yeah. It's essentially everything. What did you make of the hours? What did you get out of it? How
Mm-hmm.
did it help you? And you have to be introspective. You have to be reflective on this kind of stuff because they are looking for those type of individuals.
I think if you think about it this way, reflection is how you demonstrate that it's not checking a box for you.
Mm-hmm.
You really got something out of it. You learned, you grew, you gained skills. Um, you had some thought of, I never thought of this before, but oh my God, I've never worked with this. I've heard a lot. I've never worked with this community before. And wow, I
Mm-hmm.
did not know whatever.
Right. Added
So,
perspective. Yep.
yeah. So, really, this is how you show you didn't check off a box.
Yep.
Now, we've also spent the last 45 minutes or so giving you a long laundry list of things to do,
Uh-huh.
and there's no way around it.
Can I overlap research, community service, and clinical hours? What do you mean by
See, some
overlap,
universities
Trevor?
can only devote 2 or 3 hours a week to an activity.
What do
That
you
is
mean by
okay.
overlap? At the end of the day, you can't double dip any hours. So if you have 10 hours in one position, you can't call those same 10 hours research, community service, and clinical.
And you go back to school and you kind of pick up where you left off in the prior semester. So long term matters, but some things are just by virtue of what they are. They're also shorter as well. Again, reflection. I can't stress that one enough.
Yeah.
And then you have to find that balance. I think
Mhm.
it's a rough.
Not
I think your second couple years of college is rough. Go ahead.
Yeah, not everything can be 100% all of the
Mm-mm.
time. And that's why having a strategy and kind of a longitudinal strategy where we start, if you can start freshman year, that's ideal because then you can kind of pace yourself. And if, let's say, you were going for that research opportunity and it fell through, great, pivot. You know something else that needs to get done, but there's certain things that do need to carry through a consistent amount of time. So you really need to be thoughtful about how you're putting it together, but you can find ways. We work with pre-med students in undergrad all the time, helping them kind of set up the pacing and putting that together. I think from our backgrounds we can kind of help with that, but it's challenging, yeah. But
And I also want to throw out there, in general, I would argue academics are key while you're in college.
mhm,
It's harder to dig out of a major deficit than it is to step away from all the other stuff to pick up later.
yeah,
If you find that
yep,
you're in a class, maybe it's organic chemistry 1, maybe it's organic chemistry 2, those seem to be the big kickers. Maybe it's
yeah,
calculus. I
okay
don't
too.
know.
Hmm.
But whatever it is, if you find that that particular semester that you're in or quarter is particularly taxing and you're struggling, everything else needs to go, and that's got to be your focus. Don't overthink it. Don't be like, admissions committees are going to be like, whatever. No, they're not. No, they're not.
Yeah,
They're going to respect the fact that you recognize what your
yep,
limitations are
yeah.
and that you took steps to make it work.
Hmm.
So I cannot
And
stress that enough. Academics are key. Go ahead.
yeah, and take advantage of resources on campus, you guys. Like there's so many resources available to you, and it's not embarrassing or
Mm,
anything like that. At med school, they almost try to force resources on you to,
100%.
like, please just take advantage of all of the support that we have. Um, it it's not frowned upon, it's encouraged. Like, take advantage early and often to get your footing. Supplemental instructions, tutoring, office hours, writing centers, like just go and do it. Just go and do it. You
Yep.
will thank yourself later.
Yep.
The ADCOMs do not, they view it positively. There's no problem. Um, do what you got to do,
Yep.
and have some help as you do it. There's nothing wrong with that. So please do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also, if you're somebody who has gotten accommodations for exams while in college or even while in high school, and you're like, I'm going to go at it alone, I don't want to do it because med schools won't allow
Mhm.
it, that is absolutely 100% false. I used to work in exams. I personally had to administer exams through accommodations.
Yeah.
And so I know it's possible. don't make it any more difficult than it already is. Don't add those
Yep.
layers of problem that you don't need to add.
Yep.
I don't know how much time we're going to add for questions. So, do we want to stop there and just go to questions, Courtney?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine doing that. I
Well,
mean, I think the only other thing we had was just kind of the layout of the years,
yeah.
but yeah.
All right. Do we have any specific roadmap or suggestions for non-traditional students? I think for non-traditional students, if you have gone into another career or whatever, just have a good understanding of what you're getting into and why are you doing it. Um, Courtney, what are your thoughts about non-traditional
Yeah.
students?
It, I work with a lot of non-trads. I have a little soft spot for my non-trad. I think there you have to make very thoughtful, kind of strategic choices. I know sometimes virtual coursework may allow you to keep your job, add on less stress. Please don't. Please do not take any of your prereqs online.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
unfortunately.
You will create the biggest boundary for yourself. And so you need tidbits of information like that to understand it and to kind of pace yourself. And you can't pace yourself one class at a time, because then by the time you reach when you're taking your MCAT, this is going to be super dated. And so there's ways to kind of work around it to add to your workload. You do still have to gain at least some exposure clinically. It's not like they're just going to take your construction job and say, check, we can, that's fine. No,
We
you
do
still have to
trouble
know
like
what a physician does and, yeah, why you're passionate about it. Does your construction job hold incredible value? Absolutely, it does. Absolutely. ADCOMs will very much appreciate your lived experience and the opportunities in that. But you still have to do some of these things. And
that.
most of the time, you want to scrunch it into a small amount of time, at least the people that I talk to. So you should probably reach out to somebody who has some insight, who can help you craft it, because it is going to be a slightly, obviously, different than the traditional pathway, and it can get kind of confusing.
Yep. We didn't really talk a lot about numbers, so I'm just going to address. There's a question here about how many is considered low.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the total number of hours for any of these experiences, it can vary at different times. I am of a mindset that if you think about in an academic year, there's approximately 30 to 32 weeks. And I think if you're spending 2 to 3 hours per week per activity, personally, that to me seems reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there may be some semesters where it's higher, some semesters when it's lower. But if you're pulling in about 100-ish hours per academic year, I think that's reasonable. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
not
like to
unreasonable.
call it, quantify it, because I feel like you get into a checkbox mentality.
Yeah.
But I saw
No
somebody who
checkboxes.
had about a total of 100 hours and they're getting ready to apply in the next cycle for clinical. And I'm like, I personally think that's too low.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think what you have has been great, but I think when you look at it over the course of 3 or 4 years of an undergraduate experience, I have major concerns.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I hope that gives you some ideas of hours. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of that comes down to their interpretation of your reflectiveness, how impactful it was, right? What did you get out of it? And sometimes you do need exposure and time to learn. That's why some residencies are very long, is because you need time and exposure to these types of opportunities. And so um, there are times where people are really invested and gain a lot and had really incredible opportunities. And so maybe those people have 150, 200 hours. And you're like, how did that person get in? And that person had 4,000 hours, right? But there's a range, and some of it boils down to, who is this person? Who are you coming to me as? What have you been exposed to? What'd you get out of it? What type of person are you? How developed are you with the core competencies? Like, we're trying to show you guys, it's more than just the hours.
Mm-hmm.
Anything is better than zero. We can say that definitively. But but there truly is a bit of a range, but you need
Yeah,
to hold yourself accountable. Like, it's work. They want to see work. It's
that's
gonna
true.
be a lot of hours, and you have to be really disciplined with your time and very actively engaged. So
Yeah.
there's no real getting around that. They're not going to lower any standards here. They just seem to keep tacking them on the front end. um, so you just have to understand that that's what you're getting yourself into. That's going to be part of med school. That's going to be part of residency. That's likely going to be part of your career.
Yeah,
So just figure out your pacing and find your balance, because
it's a ride.
it's going to be a lot of hours.
Maybe we'll close on this. It says amongst the AMC quality competencies, which would you nominate as the top of the list? I personally would not give
Ooh,
one at the top of the list. I
yeah,
don't
there's a
think
couple.
they would either.
Can we go back to that slide?
Yeah. Takes a minute. But I think they're all fairly important.
There we go. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, so
I mean, you definitely need interpersonal communication skills and interpersonal skills.
Yep, you think?
service,
Yeah,
Yep.
resilience,
there's so many.
and they all come from
Resilience is
different
so huge
faucets.
right now.
Yeah, agreed.
Hmm.
Agreed.
Yeah, they want mature individuals. So a lot of this just comes with being resilient, being mature, being reflective, being passionate, being reliable. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Right.
There's a lot
I
of
mean,
them that you sit in on conversations and you're like, wow, like basically all of these are discussed in AdCom meetings on a regular basis as they're
everyone,
evaluating candidates.
yes, they are.
So,
Everyone comes from a
yeah.
different aspect of your application.
Hmm.
Every single one, I can think about where I would
Mhm.
look for that competency from this area of your application.
Yeah. If you leaned into quantitative reasoning really, really hard and let everything else fall by the wayside, that's a problem, right?
Okay.
Like, there's ones where they can't exist alone. So
Right. Yeah. All right. I am so sorry we didn't get to all the questions. Hopefully, the talk answered the majority of the earlier questions, but thank you for hanging out with us.
oh,
Your questions were great, and this was a great talk. So we really appreciate you. Thank you.
we're always here if you need us. We have those live Q&As every Wednesday. Obviously, we're very accessible individuals, so if you need to email us or reach out to our team, we're here for it.
We are.
But
All right. Thank you again.
yeah.
All right. That is that session. We're actually on break for MappdCon for the next half an hour, but I don't think I'm going to go anywhere. I'm going to continue hanging out with you all, answer some questions with you all. What's going on today? Oh man, it's been a fun day this morning. We had lots of great sessions. If you weren't registered, you can go register still. Mappdcon.com. I think there's just a 30-minute break here for lunch for some people, and then jumping right back in. Actually, I'll share here the agenda. So moving forward so this session just ended. We have why VCOM, so exploring opportunities or admissions and opportunities in osteopathic medicine with VCOM. And then we have an MD versus DO versus PA. That should be a really interesting conversation. We have Savannah Perry moderating that, the founder of the PA platform. Looks like she has a DO on the panel, an MD on the panel, and a PA on the panel. So that'll be a fun session to check out. That is from 12:30 to 1:30 roughly Eastern time. So in 30 minutes, that's starting. At the same time, unfortunately, two great sessions happening at the same time. We have a whole TMDSAS overview with Dr. Scott Wright, who is the retired executive director of TMDSAS. We have Enrique Hasso, who's with Mappd now, but he was just recently the director of TMDSAS. And then we have Sally and Nina joining us from TMDSAS, who are currently at TMDSAS. So we got them going on, or them joining us. At 1, we have Nina from Pre-Health Shadowing joining, talking about getting started with shadowing, how to be successful in medical school. Should be a great conversation with our friends over at Arkansas College of Osteopathic Medicine. And then my session finally coming up at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. My first panel with Juliet Hill, Director of Admissions of University of Florida, Dr. Rafael Rivera, Senior Associate Dean for Admissions at NYU, Grossman School of Medicine. Great friend, Dr. Layla Amiri, another great friend, the Associate Dean of Admissions at Larner, Robert Larner College of Medicine at Vermont. So come check that out as well. All right, friends, what other questions you have? Let's hang out. Or I can just sit here. Football's starting, so I know if you want to go watch some football, you can go do that. I'm going to check out the, I think, Alabama-Wisconsin game. I'm going to watch, or at least keep in the background, see what's going on there. But what else? Hope you're doing well. Crazy Saturday. What are you guys doing on your weekends? MCAT prep, shadowing, clinical experience, relaxing, laundry, meal prepping. What's going on? Working. Oh, that's boring. So, Trevor, I'm assuming you mentioned playing with Joey back in the day. I'm assuming this little image of you is you as a quarterback. Did you play it all after high school? Just played in high school? Played at Laney Community College. Awesome. Fantastic. Played the next 2 years. Love it. You miss it? The athletics, the team, all that stuff. There's a lot. All right, friends. Maybe I will head out and come back. Ended up getting shoulder surgery after sophomore year. I was done. Had Division II scholarships. They're only partial, so too expensive. Yeah, it's a bummer. The whole scholarship world outside of Division I just doesn't work as well. And then D3, there are no athletic scholarships, right? I think one of the fun things that I'm seeing, completely off the topic of medical school, one of the things that it's interesting seeing is with all of the portal stuff, students that are going to smaller schools and working their butt off and then getting a chance to go play for bigger schools because they have proven themselves. So I think it helps democratize some of the process to where if you go to a smaller high school or your high school team isn't very strong and therefore your performance isn't as strong as maybe it could be if you aren't surrounded with stronger people, you can go to a college, prove yourself there, and then go get recruited to transfer to somewhere else. I think is really, really exciting. Yeah, Cam Ward, perfect example of that. I just Googled where he started. Right, Incarnate Word. Yeah, and then he's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm really good." I told you. Right. Even if you think about Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen coming out of high school, 0-star recruit, no offers, went and played JUCO, got one offer to go to Wyoming, and he's crushing it. If he was around in the portal era, he likely would have gotten offers to go to much stronger programs than Wyoming. Not to disparage Wyoming, but Wyoming isn't a Power 5, a big Power 5 school. I don't think. I don't know if technically they are. Yeah, we don't talk about Aaron Rodgers. We don't talk about anti-vaxxers. Cool. All right, friends. I'm gonna go hang out for a minute, and I'll be back for the next set of sessions at 12:30 Eastern.